Welcome to the Fullcaster Podcast, Episode 6. Our guest today is one of the top karters in the nation, Matt Johnson. Most of you guys probably know who Matt is, as he is the reigning Pro Tour champion in the X30 Masters category. We're going to be talking to him about that and a bunch more here shortly. But as usual, a little bit of current events here, Dirk.
Yep.
We are recording this on May 7th. It's been about 2 weeks since the last time we were actually sitting down here doing a recording.
Right.
It's not the month distance we had from the first bit and the second bit. But, a couple weeks now, things have kind of moved around a little bit. With things starting to open up a little bit, I know that Adams has got people rolling over there for practice. Willow is doing that. I saw that Paris is
quite a few
also
tracks,
rolling.
and then also the first one we heard about was Glen Helen. Not a kart track, but a place opening up for the public again.
And that being with San Bernardino County, again, us being here in Southern California, San Bernardino County, which we are also in,
right?
They opened up the parks, the county parks, and so that's how Glen Helen was able to get in the game, and I believe that's how Paris is able to get in the game as well.
Okay.
Adams also getting some people out there rolling. I've heard of some people getting out there getting a chance to practice, not just karts, but I saw Supermoto out there too.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of neat.
That took me back. That took me back. So we had at a Pacific Grand Prix, we had Supermoto, drifting. It was a lot like Adams in that regard with the repertoire of stuff.
Right.
But, yeah, man, seeing those guys back into the
They don't
corner
do
is
any
pretty
competition
badass.
karts, do they?
What's that, PGP?
Yeah.
Not anymore, dude. Well, we used to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was competition karts, rental karts, cars, lapping days.
That's pretty neat.
And
when I was there, they kicked out a guy who had a competition kart, so I didn't know anything about it.
You have to have, now you can do it, but it's got to be a 4-stroke.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's a different, they've got like a noise thing or something like that. So that's, but before I left, like right before I left, it was like one of the last drift events that they did. So since 2011, they've been almost predominantly rentals and 4-strokes.
Right.
But, anyway, with Adams having some people come out there, and I know Willow has got some people out there. We're seeing, or at least on the social media, we're hearing about teams and drivers and whatnot, people getting a chance to go out there and drive a little bit. So that's pretty damn cool. And I'm a little envious. I will say that even I am starting to get the itch a little bit.
Yeah, me too.
You're at least able to scratch it a little bit on the iRacing.
Yeah, and I think I'm a little bit more afraid to go do the real thing again and just see how tired I get and how quickly I become.
Man, we were actually talking about getting tired and whatnot, and I've got this freaking pinched nerve thing in my back right now. It's just killing me.
Your pinched nerve and I don't know what's going on with my back, but neither of us can lay down and save our lives right now.
It's not good. So
karting may help.
Yeah, we're going to open, and we're like, we can't drive now, so we're game over. But to kind of scratch that itch, I've been doing the Dirt 4.
Nice.
It's not super new, but I've got Xbox Game Pass.
Yeah.
And Dirt 4.
The Dirt series is fun.
Yeah.
It's not super realistic, but it's a really fun game.
Yeah, and I think that's what I wanted. I just want, I love the career mode.
Yeah.
I like working my way up through the ranks.
And there's such a wide discipline of cars you get to drive in that.
Yeah. You know what I hate, though?
Huh.
It looks badass in real life, but I freaking hate it in the game, is the cross kart.
Same.
God, I hate that thing.
That thing is tough to drive. It's so throttle sensitive, man.
Spin Tire City. It's ridiculous.
Speaking of which, Dirt 5 was just announced this morning.
Really?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
They just put out a thing,
that's
so
ironic.
that's pretty cool.
Dirt 5. Yeah, and again, for me, it's the career mode. So I'm looking at things to try to scratch that itch, where it, on the Game Pass. Like, honestly, I almost picked up NASCAR Heat 4.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's got pretty good, or maybe it's 3, I can't remember. But it's got a pretty good career mode. Mm-hmm. We were talking about that with Diego Alvarado. That's what he does with his deal. But
and actually,
just because of the career mode, like, I like the idea of working up through the ranks, running your own team and that kinds of stuff with all the fake money and none of the stuff you have to worry about.
I forgot what NASCAR game it was I played when I was a kid, but yeah, I thought that the best part was having to move up through the ranks, and it was
be Dirt to Daytona.
It was
that was the best.
The one it was the wheeling car I remember being in. The little open wheel car that they kind of have.
The modified?
Is it the modified?
It'd be a modified.
Okay,
yeah.
That thing was so much fun to drive, but that was more fun than doing the Cup Series later on in the game.
Yeah.
But yeah, the career mode's awesome in some of these games.
Yeah, and for me, like also we've talked about, well, not really on the show, but I love like RPGs and that kind of stuff too. When we're not talking about racing, when I'm not involved in that, I like to lose myself in some of that stuff. So with the career stuff though, it's nice because you just kind of get involved in it, right? And I think that's what's kind of cool is that what we're seeing, and at least on social media, is at whether it be Willow or Adams or what have you, we're seeing people getting a chance to scratch that itch, and maybe it's jealousy a little bit.
Yeah.
Where they're getting a chance to do it and we're not. And you try to figure out how to do it as best you possibly can. But it kind of gets me thinking about what the plans were for the year and what we're going to do when we get back. I know my plan was to prepare for, I wanted to run Pro Kart the entire year.
Right.
And I wanted to get the X30 Masters Championship. That was like my main goal, but I also wanted to run the KA stuff because I wanted to do two things at the end of the year, and that was rock the Rio and the KA Masters deal. And I wanted to have another shot at X30 Masters at Supernats, and try not to look as big of an idiot doing that deal. And then do some LAKCs as well, again, for the seat time and whatnot. Well, now with all this stuff going on is, one of the Pro Kart races being canceled, and then we're looming on the next one.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can pull that thing off. But, yeah, I'm starting to think about what we might do differently as far as maybe trying to save some of that money, to be honest with you. While I haven't gone crazy on the money spending during this period of time, I'm still curious about how much I might spend moving forward, especially, if Supernats still happens without a hitch, Rock the Rio still happens without a hitch. Those are big expenditures, and maybe I just do LAKC here and there instead of a full season like I was thinking.
Right.
But I'll tell you what, if the entry list looks sharp, if I'm like, I'm probably not going to do LAKC, and then I find out that it's got some big
names.
If I find old Matty J is going to be in the X30 game,
yeah,
I'm going to be there.
You got to find you a kart. That's
nice.
Always the catch with you.
Yeah, well, you got to go against the best competition.
Yeah.
But so I'll be curious to see what happens. I know for me that's what I was planning. What was your general plan of the start of the year, and how has that maybe changed?
Man, the plan was when I went out and got all the funding for the year was all of LAKC, the 9 races. You and I had talked about taking the CSK team up to Willow?
Button Willow, for Civil War.
For the Civil War, the KPX deal.
Well, and we just found out that actually got canceled.
So KPX pulled the rest of their calendar, but it was all of LAKC and the KA, maybe do the 206 senior class up at Button Willow, but we'll see what happens when we come back. I'm 50-50 if I'm going to keep racing the rest of the year, or if I might just focus on work, because I think we're going to be so busy here. It might just take up a lot of my time.
Yeah, I'm. You say that.
Yeah,
I think as soon as we have go-karts going around this joint again, you're like, I need to get back into
it. Because the plan was...
You haven't been in a go-kart since Challenge.
Yeah.
So we're talking end of February.
Man.
It's been 2 full months.
Yeah.
And the last time, I should say, we were probably you were in a go-kart sprint for the clinic, but not a competition kart. So
the one that counts,
right? This has been 2 months, and it's tough.
Yeah,
you're at least doing the iRacing thing and getting something out of it, though.
Yeah, it's definitely helped keeping me sharp and whatnot in some aspects. But I think we talked about away from the studio the other night it was really cool to get back into the first race of the year for iRacing and have a rolling start and get that adrenaline rush again.
Right.
And be like, I miss competition.
Yeah. Well, I think that's going to be it, too, is whether you're getting out to we talk about Paris, we talk about Adams, we talk about Willow. None of those places have competitions. So what you're really doing is you are you're staying sharp, if you will. You are, scratching the itch. But it's not like you're doing prep for a particular event at those places.
Right.
Unlike if you were to go to Button Willow or something, which, by the way, I've heard they've just started to open up as well.
Okay.
So if you're going to those things and you're working on something that's testing, I suppose you could still say you're testing at these other joints. And, I'd be curious to hear what Willow is like and whatnot. But, yeah, it's a bit of a different gig. And, I know that everybody really wants to get back to the track. Everybody wants to get in the seat, and especially those of us who make our living in the industry. We definitely want to get rolling, but I know for sure. Even our guest today is like that. And, like I said, reigning champ at X30 Masters. Curious to see what his plans are for the rest of the year. And we've heard about the SKUSA schedule.
Yeah.
Being kind of adjusted. I want to talk to him a little bit about it. I think it's probably a good time. Let's go ahead and bring on our guest today, old Matt Johnson. Come on over, bud. Matt Johnson, thanks for coming on board, bud.
Thanks for having me on, Mike.
Well,
happy to be here.
I know I had to twist your arm to come out here and hang out with us. You're the
bad
Matt
enough
Johnson.
coming to this place when you got to drive, let alone hang out.
Oh man,
Pencil this in for today. Thank God.
I did it for Derek, not for Mike.
Yeah, there you go.
there we go. See, there is a Derek Esquibel fan out there. His name is
Yeah,
Matty J.
shit.
Hey man, what we always start out because everybody makes their living in different ways and kind of goes from different walks of life, etc. What do you do for a job? Like what brings in the dollars on a regular? And has that been adjusted at all with what we got going right now?
Yeah, I mean, I would have to say, obviously, my primary source of income is from racing and karting. And sometimes when it's not karting, it might be at Irwindale or wherever. Anytime, sometimes I'd like to think I act as a consultant, if you will. But I've been around racing for 30 years now, which is obviously the majority of my life. And definitely there's no doubt with the little thing we got going on right now, it's put a little bit of a hinder to that. But I don't have the needs to try and live like a millionaire in a mansion with a Ferrari in the driveway. And I'm not forced to have a huge overhead, and I've managed to save some money. So I'm doing okay for the moment.
Well, that's good. That's good. Now, you said most of your life, about 30 years. How old are you? If you don't
40
mind me?
now.
40?
Yeah.
Big 4-0.
Yeah.
Now, did you just turn, or are you going on
40
41?
40 in December, so
Okay.
I'm about halfway through 40 now.
We're rolling into it.
Oh,
The
it
next
goes by-
5 years, you're actually going to stay 40.
Dude, it goes by faster and faster every year. I still feel and think sometimes like I'm 18 or 21 unless I drank the night before. I'll be honest, that now if I get hurt, it takes a little longer to start feeling better again.
Right.
It doesn't seem to go, the little aches or pains that you might endure from that last, say, a week or two, now last sometimes 2 months. But that's just part of the deal.
I joke with people that once I hit 30s, things started heading downhill. I felt like I woke up 30, and man, it's a little tougher now, right? And I'll say that to my friends or whatnot who are in their 40s or 50s, like, dude, shut up.
Yeah,
you
no,
don't
I mean,
even know yet.
For
dude.
me, I was good through my 30s. I felt fine, and all that was all good. Like I said, I just now about 38, 39, 40. I'm starting to definitely tell that I'm getting old.
So if I'm feeling at 38 right now, it's gonna be a bad couple of years coming up for me.
I'm just taking notes from both of you guys on what I got to keep an eye on.
I've been blessed with really good health, excuse me, and I've always been fortunately a smaller guy and pretty all good on the physical side of things, especially for racing. So, and I think with all the racing that I have done, I've never really stopped. I've taken some time off here and there. Only ran maybe a handful of races across the time span of 1 year, but for the most part, I have stayed pretty active, and I think that's played an instrumental role in my condition.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, I complain a little bit, but I know that most of it's my own damn fault. It's not like I'm out there doing a whole
like
hell of a lot.
yesterday I went to Willow, and I haven't driven since Nolan. It's only been a couple of months or whatever, but I thought, well, I wonder how sore I might get, or how things are going to go, how well I'll drive, etc. And I felt good. I actually felt really good on the execution side of things as far as driving, and every session was never less than 10, 12, 15 laps. And sometime I did, more than 20. So while I felt, the demand in terms of my physical strength that it took to do those laps and do them well, I felt good overall. I mean, I was a little tired last night when I got home and whatnot, but to be honest, I haven't been as strict with my diet or making sure I get the right amount of sleep, and all those kind of things you do when you know that there's a real race coming up, you know.
Is it just the motivation, not having that race to look forward to, or?
Yeah, dude, that's exactly it. And to be honest, I didn't even decide to go until less than 24 hours
Oh,
prior.
to Willow.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
I mean, my thing was sitting on the vertical, and it still had the engine and everything on it because we were ready to go out for our final session on Friday at NOLA, and aside from having to fill it up with water and put some air in the tires and fuel and whatnot, I was ready. So
Nice.
If that was a bigger project, it might have been like,
yeah, you're probably right. And I didn't, like I said, I did a lot. I probably did over 100 laps yesterday, but I didn't.
Oh, wow. Nice.
I didn't feel the urge, or wouldn't say I didn't have the desire, but I didn't feel the need to get out there and run all day, you know, from morning till dusk and whatnot. So I probably did between 5 and 7 sessions. I think I probably did like 6 or 7, and it was enjoyable. You know,
And it was a casual day for you.
it was
for
casual.
Sure.
It was relaxing.
were you out there with some other people? You doing some coaching or anything like that? Or was it
didn't
really
really-
just about getting out there and playing?
It was more getting out there and playing. I was coaching and trying to help Harrelson a little bit, and we've got a new guy on our team named Ron Jenkins, who's actually
Yeah, I know Ron actually raced with him in the KA stuff.
yeah, and I was pretty surprised with Ron's ability, especially yesterday. He actually had really good pace. There was a session or two that he was actually quicker than I was,
Wow.
and like I said, I mean, I felt good. I felt like I was on it. So
You can say he had the draft from you. Let's just call
I
it.
wish I could, dude. But the truth is, the guy did it on his own, and he
Nice.
drove well. And it was funny because the truth, and it's always kind of been this way for me, right? Like I don't always qualify well or lay down that hot lap like
Right.
some guys might do. But anytime we went out there on the track as a, you know, with the three of us all together, I mean, I usually was a little better off, especially over the longer run. So
Right.
I think, you know, this sport, as time's gone on, I've realized, especially over a racing, you know, side of things, and now with the majority of the tracks we go to being over 45 seconds long, the lap, people don't realize, and it's so easy to get caught up with the emotional side of it and everything involved that goes into the intensity of racing, that the lap is really long in the race. I mean, you talk 20, 25 laps. It takes a while, and you learn also from watching on the outside, because I don't race as much as I used to now, but I help a lot. And the way the race unfolds and how it starts out, you know, you look at the gap sometimes between the guy in third and the guy, say, leading the race, and you'd think the race is over 5, 6 laps in. Well, here we get around to lap 15, 16, 17, and sometimes the guy in third, or hell, for that matter, back and forth, 5th, 6th, he's running for the lead.
They start
And-
reeling him in, yeah.
Yeah, and the guy that was leading the race that you thought was gone is back in third. So from, you know, the tires wearing out, the setup in the kart, the drivers, whether it be fatigue or whatever the case might be, you know, there's a lot that goes into the race that is realistically a short race, but at the same time it's long. So
Yeah, I mean, especially when you're in that top group, the top 5 or so, you're not going lap to lap, you're going corner to corner, and it just seems so much slower, you know? I mean, I remember we've all raced 206 against each other, right? And that some of the times in that money race, we're like, just throw the freaking checkered already, you know? It's
yeah,
just, the
but
thing never ends.
still, I mean, I tell people this all the time, and whether they believe it or not, I believe that the time that I spent in 206 made me better as a racer and a driver, because again, I mean, it's a long lap, and if you're going to go that much slower,
Yeah.
the lap's going to be that much longer. So
Yeah, I agree. I actually talked to John Crow about that, right? Where John is getting ready to do a pass. This is on the old Cal Speed before we made the adjustment. He's getting ready to do a pass, and it's like he's going for the pass. And he's still going for the pass, and he's still going for the pass because he hasn't
Right.
made it to the next corner. Whereas on the tag stuff or the shifter stuff, you go for the pass and boom, it's done. But you go for the pass on a 206, and it just takes a lot longer to get there. Just
But
because you're
There's
going
more to
slower.
develop. in
Yeah.
that.
Exactly. You got planned for that a good chunk in advance.
well, you do, and to side with you on that, but at the same time correct you a little bit. I think the same thing applies in tag, because the reality is, if you go in there and you just hustle it in on someone and park it on the guy to execute the pass, say for third or fourth position, or second rather, and the leader's got a gap of say 2 seconds, well, now that you've just slowed your lap time down another half a second plus, now you're 2.5 or 3.5 seconds back compared to 2 or 3. And at a level where guys are trading off quick lap times back and forth and they're varying within a tenth or two, I hate to break it to most people, but in case you don't know math, it ain't going to add up. You're not going to get there.
No, and actually, that's something I noticed. I want to say probably for the first time at Supernats. I was having a hard time in that as far as consistency for that last left-hand that led on the long chute.
Yep.
And I would just turn in a gnat's ass early. Well, you do that, and now you got to make a correction around the apex or whatever.
All your speed on the straight.
Well, there's that, but I have to lift to keep it out of the fence.
Yep. Or
I'm like, well,
that's because you're getting to the gas too early. So
no, 100%.
Even if you took the same approach and didn't have to lift to get onto the fence or keep it off the fence, you would still have to get back to the gas later to make it one fluid motion to make it so you don't have to lift.
And that was and I said it before in other stuff is that my biggest issue was learning turn in to apex on the red tire. It didn't rotate as much as I was used to, and all this other kinds of crap. And I was getting on the gas way too early, and it was effing with me. And I'm like, that wasn't that big of a mistake. It just happens to be happening right before the longest bloody chute, and one of the best passing opportunities. And it would burn me. I do all this work, and I get around the person I was definitely faster than, make some stupid little mistake like that, and
you're back into the red.
Here
now,
they go,
losing all the time,
and they'll take it. It just takes the one because I'm talking about being faster than that person, maybe a quarter second, not enough to say sayonara if I make a mistake because you work little bit to move, and then you make one mistake that costs you a second. Yeah, right back in the game.
Yeah.
To go back to you talking about passing the tag stuff, we only did one round of LKC this year, but that was my first race back in a two-stroke for a while. And in the heat race, I started about 6 or so, worked my way up and fell back a few times and whatnot. But I definitely had to make sure I'm not getting complacent with, okay, I'm in a faster car, I can make a few more things happen where to a certain aspect you can because you're in a, especially for me coming from a 206, but to not get complacent with throwing it in and being like, oh, just horsepower your way out of it. It's still momentum in the KA.
Well, and it's all relative, isn't it?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Kind of, I think that's what Maddie's really getting at, right? Is that with the 206, yeah, maybe it takes longer, literally, from one corner to the other because we're not going as fast, and it takes less time in a faster kart. We're all going the same speed. Right, so it's relative one person to the other. You still have to plan ahead. You still don't just because you got more grip or more horsepower or whatever.
Right,
it's not like you now have free reign to make mistakes.
Yeah,
that's
you can't do that.
And it's relative too, like you said, as far as who you're racing with. I mean, if you got a guy in front of you that you're trying to gain on, whether you guys are racing something that's got 40 horsepower or 10, the mistakes. The margin for error is very, very small. And again, it all depends on who you're racing against and how many mistakes they're going to make versus how many mistakes you might make. For sure, I'll say that the slower you're going, the recovery time, if you will, on scrubbing too much speed, if you will, or something like that, is probably a little bit longer and harder to make up. But it's still all the same. I mean, yeah, there's a little more forgiveness, and if the thing has a little yaw coming off the corner in your X30 than in your 206, your thing will still straighten out and get going, if you will. But I think it's all the same. You gotta, like I said, the 206 taught me that you really got to plan ahead, which is something I've always known, of course, right? I've been doing this forever, but
forces you to do it.
It forces you to do it, exactly, and it helps you understand also how the kart changes and how it reacts to the applications and inputs, whether it be on the steering wheel, the gas, or the brake. Because everything's happening so much slower, with it slowing things down, you have that much more of a feel on what everything's doing.
You can read everything a lot more.
Yeah.
Sure.
So if there's things you weren't quite sure about before, as far as whether something you were doing on the track was better or worse in terms of driving input, it might help you understand a little better when you're in a 206, which is actually why we have one of our X30 drivers now for this moment doing some 206 seat time.
Okay.
For those reasons, and to help just keep things, it really forces you to be consistent and smooth.
Yeah, one of the other things too about the 206 that I thought was really good was especially if you can get the autopilot down, where you're just you are flipping the switch and you're getting around the joint. The amount of racing that's going on up in your head, and the chess match, and thinking about stuff in advance and analyzing what's going on in front of you. I know, like when I was at Supernats and I'm, tail end of the top 10 or whatever, or trying to get in the top 10. Different race back there than what you had to deal with, my friend, which I'm sure you've had to do before. But back there, where am I better? And you're doing the exact same thing at the front. But where I'm getting at is that being able to, I think one of the nice things about the 206 is it really does help you mentally more than anything else. The mental game in 206, I think, is a lot tougher than the physical game, bar none. And if you're just going to go out there and drive the piss out of a 206, you're probably not going to win because you're going to get out-thought.
Yeah.
I when I first got into the 206 stuff, when the platform first started coming around, it was some of the most fun I ever had. Matter of fact, it's the first time I raced with you two guys, and it was a blast because what also 206 does for people is it brings drivers from indoor karting and places like that, or even from your guys' your series here.
The arrive and drive stuff.
Yeah, the arrive and drive stuff with Cal Speed here. That I'd never seen or known who these guys were before. And next thing I know, they're running me hard, and I'm trying to intimidate them and use them up and everything else. And to be honest with you, more times than not, I got the short end of the stick. So the first thing I figured out was, well, you ain't, because you're probably not going fast enough to really scare anybody.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And the truth is, I mean, even if you were to try to drive a guy out to the edge of the track, it's, again, you're probably going to end up worse off than the guy you're trying to give the business to. So
I remember you doing that with Mark Connell in the spec category.
Yep, that's one of the guys I was thinking about when I was just saying that. He didn't give an inch, and to tell you the truth, he held his own. And we didn't crash, thankfully, but there were other guys like Calvin that I'd got into it with here at the top of the hill that I thought, if I just ran him out of room, because he was racing me hard, it's hard to get away from anybody, especially in that deal. And I'm like, well, I got to get rid of this guy.
Yeah.
So I try to run him. I try to run him out of room and get rid of him, and I end up burning myself. So
there was the year we all did it back in 2017. You just said it perfectly. Everyone from so many walks of karting and racing came.
It was the best. Yeah, dude, Nash came, Freckleton. All those guys showed up, and
your dad got out there too.
Yeah, dude, it was the best. It was really, really. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest with you, I miss it.
The practice.
Friday practice.
I think I probably had the
that was
most
where the trophies
fun.
Came out, man.
Friday practice for Tri-C was a freaking blast.
Yeah.
I remember there was a couple of times where I'm like, I'm done. I don't need to do anything else. And I see everybody freaking getting online.
On the grid,
I'm like, yeah, I'm going out.
Yeah,
I want to be part of the fun.
The year that I did the whole 206 championship thing with LAKC was definitely a good time. It was convenient for me because it was an arrive and drive thing. Most of the time I didn't get to show up for Saturday practice because I'd be at Irwindale Speedway the night before running the late model.
Yeah.
So.
And you were running with Frank Baldozer.
Yep, running with Frank. And of course we had really good equipment, and he took great care of me. So it was a lot of fun. And the first few races I did, I won the championship that year, thankfully. And I think it took all the way till the very end, like the last race. But
I think you were going against one of the guys who was ended up on our team, Jake Hood. He was one of them, and Henry Morse.
And Henry Morse started winning right away, and
he was with PGR, I believe.
Yeah.
Yep. And finally, it took like 3 or 4 races. I always ran towards the point end, and I always had a shot to win. But somehow, by the end of the race, I'd end up 4th, 5th, crashed. Whatever.
I mean, the speed wasn't the issue.
Third,
you think
second.
it was probably just the chess match? The
chess match. I think I was too aggressive, and my good friend Steven, who came over and told me, the guy don't ever say too much. I was surprised you got him on the podcast, actually. I'm interested. I'm interested to listen to it because he don't talk too much, but when he does, you better listen.
We had to tell him to shut up, actually.
You better listen when he speaks up, because he's one of
sure.
those guys that doesn't say too much, but he sees a lot.
Oh man,
dude, I couldn't agree more.
You're gonna love that episode. I'm so glad we have it recorded because I can keep going back and listen to it.
Yeah.
Whether it's the 206 stuff that I've done or the KA stuff, and Mike, you're the same way with him. There's this time, like, he'll just walk up to you, and I'm like, all right, drop what I'm doing because it's going to be some value right now.
Right, yeah,
you know?
because he don't, like I said, he's a little bit quiet, and I know him better than most. He's like a brother to me, but if he comes around and he's got something to say, like you said, you usually better stop what you're doing and listen for a second because there's going to be some merit to it for sure.
I didn't bring it up in the podcast, but actually I got a chance to drive for him.
Oh, that's right.
On God, was it the first money race?
It was the
one of
second
them
one.
KPX races or something, right?
No, I worked with him up there, but I actually drove his go-kart.
Right.
I drove for him, essentially, on the second
The
money
last
race.
206 race we did, the money race,
Yeah. And he was watching and whatnot, and like, I'm like, hey, what do you think? And he's like, don't worry about it, dude. I got it. That was basically the conversation.
Yeah.
I'm like, I think we could use this. He's like, yeah, I know. Yeah, and I got it. Like, you go do what you got to do, and I got to hand it over there. And, dude, there was a little bit of some shenanigans. Maddie, I think you were in that race, weren't you? I think
Oh, that was the one you won.
In the second money race?
Kart.
Yes, I was. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, so you were in that, and it was in qualifying that were some shenanigans, right?
Sure.
Oh my God! Yeah.
You and David, I think, got linked up on draft.
Yeah. Well,
And I didn't, and I was like third.
I played my
fast.
cards right, but I also got lucky. I remember that deal. What happened was I think I went wide in a corner on accident.
Yeah. So
and Vasquez got around me. So next thing I know, I'm like, okay, it's 2-lap qualifying. Perfect. That's what it was. I blew my first lap. It was cold, and I blew past one of the corners, and Vasquez went around. And I'm like, all right, well, if this goes like it should and I don't touch him, I'm going to get a toe.
And I think
And
David,
I got one.
I think David got pole.
No, I got
Or you
pole.
got pole, and
Yeah.
David was right there, and I was third all by myself.
Oh,
and
man.
Steven and I were looking at each other like, these sons of bitches.
Oh,
they
yeah.
definitely got some help.
that was actually the loudest I've heard Steven. Was he's like, he was
I
about to
got to
protest it.
admit,
the tech area over there.
that was
we're all
one of
kinda
those
hanging
deals where I was definitely not the fan favorite, and things were definitely worked out in my favor that particular time for sure.
Well, you had great equipment. I mean, Huffy.
No,
Huffy
we were on it. I mean,
Huffy
we were the
puts on good
quickest the
stuff.
whole time anyway. We
Yeah.
the reality is as far as that flyer goes, I already got done saying earlier that I'm not much of a qualifier as it is. I've had my time and I've done well in qualifying, but shoot, probably the last 10 years or more, I haven't been the greatest qualifier, I don't think. And
Man, when I got out,
I got
with
the
you
pole
on,
that day.
when I went out with you on Friday practice, it was like the last session of the day. I go out first. I'm like, okay, and he's using me as the carrot because I don't think you got to drive much that Friday really, but I'm seeing I'm gaining on you in a
ready
few
for Irwindale at that time too.
Yeah.
See, I'm gaining on you a few times, and I'm pulling you, I'm losing you here, whatever it is. When we get out in front, I'm like, God damn, I am driving my ass off to keep up with you right now. And then I just cannot touch you all day on Saturday. And then the money race, I'm like, I'm just going for top 5.
Yeah, we had a really good combination. That was actually 2018, so I was done with Irwindale.
Oh,
but
that was 18, yeah.
Yeah, but
second one.
from all of the time we put into the 206 category in 2017 with Frank, I had brought a lot of that R&D with me over to Huff's program, and we had talked a couple 3 weeks before the race. I said, hey, look, I want to win this thing. I think we can do it. Yeah. He goes, okay, I've got motors this side. I said, all right, well, get this, get that, get.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Here's a little list for you. Get these things, and we'll be right on track. And
Who are you driving for, Derek? Because you weren't driving our shit.
No, it was RLV.
That's
No. Sorry.
Not
for
the money race. Because the money race, they wouldn't. We were sponsored by
That's
RLV,
right.
but they wouldn't
It
let
was,
us do the money race.
that's
Steve
right.
Jasinski's cart.
That's right. So
Yeah.
you were running for. That's
And that thing was a
also
piece too, though. That thing was good.
It was
And I
rolling.
just effed it up in qualifying.
I had a good day. I mean, shoot, I didn't even win the thing until the last corner or two, because somehow Drew had gotten around me with about 2 or 3 to go, and then he just got he blocked a little too, I guess not well enough, but
Right.
he defended a little too much on the entry at one corner and it forced him wide, and I was able to just take it from him. And actually, now that I think about it, it happened right here coming up the hill, and
Up in the
Cook
fourth.
Cook was in third, and he finished me off by pushing me by just before coming up the hill here. So yeah, Casey helped me win that one, I think, but I felt like I was going to get it either way. He was doomed.
Yeah, I tell you right now, you're going against someone like Drew or Maddie. You got to pick one.
Yeah.
Because you can't beat them both. That's gonna get ugly.
No, I mean, I thought I was done, to be honest, because I knew Jake was really fast that weekend, that day, and when he got in front of me, I think he had a little more mid than I did, or there was somewhere where he kind of pretty much had me, because that's the reason I couldn't even think about getting him back until we were coming up the hill here. That's what it was. He ran the inside before he made that 90 left.
So he just made it a little bit tighter on himself.
He made it too tight for himself before we came up the hill, and I just crossed him over. And then, like I said, I was probably 80% of the way by, and then Cook helped me finish him off, and the rest was history.
Man, that's good stuff.
What was that? Is that 1,500?
I can't remember.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember
good.
you.
Cool.
You roll up to the grid, and the most expensive part on his cart was the OTK wheels he had on there.
Yeah, dude,
And-
those
and I
things
was
won
like-
the race.
And I'm
those
like,
things won the race. We were
God.
hurting the tire, and I'm like, dude, I think we just need a stiffer wheel. And I think that was actually Josh's call.
oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
and but I had brought him because I knew,
Man.
that they were gonna.
I love
It was
that.
hot that day. So
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
The way it ran was it ran after
yeah, it was at the end of the race day or whatever.
into
Yeah.
the race day.
Yeah, it was at the very
because
end.
the first one was on the season finale,
Right.
and they didn't make that mistake again. So
No,
they did it
that
in the
was
middle.
rough.
But so it was in the summertime. You're right. It was
Yeah,
pretty
so
damn
I don't know
warm.
what I'm talking about when I say a cold track. Maybe I was just on brand new tires or something.
Well,
For whatever
some-
reason, dude, I blew a corner on the
Sun was
first
going down.
qualifying lap.
Sun was going down. It's not like you get a lot of heat in the tires in 2 laps either. So
Yeah.
you know, we're all hanging out waiting
Good.
for things to get going at the end of practice.
You're
day.
gonna like the story that Steven brings up about the first money race between you and Phil.
Oh, well, yeah. Yeah.
So you'll be able
yeah.
to hear that.
Well,
one.
that go. I was gonna.
That was awesome
I was
to watch
gonna,
the video on
I
that.
was gonna use that story as an example about trying to run guys out of room. And-
Yeah.
Oh man.
I don't think you. Did you
poor-
know it was Phil?
Yeah. I knew
Yeah.
it was filled. It was probably one of the moments I'm not the most proud of that achievement. Let's just put it that way. I mean,
You walked away with a cool $100 though, man.
Oh, dude, he's so
$100 for like fifth or something.
Yeah, dude, yeah, you're so we. Oh my God! So we come in this. First of all, I think I defended in the final corner as you're coming up here.
Yeah.
And we make that tight left, and Phil hangs the outside. Well, I'm not going to get past on the outside coming to the checkered, so I gave him a choice to either lift or hit the damn barrier, and
It was the latter.
Yeah, he either chose not to lift, or I maybe ran him out there too late. It doesn't matter.
He ended up. Yeah.
Look, Phil and I have known each other since we're the same age. We were 12 years old, probably, right? So I've known Phil a long time, and Phil. Okay, I'll say this right now. Phil Giebler is one of the best go-karters I've ever seen, and I've seen a lot of them, and there are some really fast guys, and they all have got their strengths and weaknesses and everything else, but Phil was really, really good, and Phil is one of the coolest, nicest dudes in the whole world, okay? So let's bring that to the next point, where after I get rid of him, and I come across...
And he's been get rid of.
Yeah,
Like,
hey,
he is
the
stationary, broke.
The poor bastard was on a brand new Burrell that he brought out of his shop for this go-kart race, and I ruined it
206
for him.
money race.
Yeah, and I ruined it for him
Scratch.
like a jerk, right? So I nuked him, and I didn't know. Well, here's the thing: when I ran him out of room like that, I didn't know he crashed.
Oh shit.
Okay, well then the race is over. I finished fifth. I'm like, whew. I wasn't fast that day. I held on to fifth, obviously, for dear life. You know, and we come into the cool down lap, and all of a sudden I see him cutting across the track. I'm like, oh shit, he's gonna want to get me. So I stayed behind him. Right?
Yeah.
Come in the pits all nice and slow. And like I said earlier, Phil's the nicest, coolest, and he's also very quiet too. Another
he
guy
is.
that doesn't say much. Who, when he speaks up, you better listen, right?
Right.
Well, he spoke up that time. Oh my! I think he really wanted to fight because he was calling me names and all kinds of stuff, and. I'm like,
He wanted his 100, man, and you
well,
robbed him
no,
of it.
he didn't want that. He didn't want that 100. He wanted to
Probably
bring
like
the go kart back
gonna
in
say-
one piece, dude. So he's like, rah, he's calling names, and he's letting me have it, and I ain't got much to say because I was wrong, you know. And
Right.
and well, why'd you do that? I go, bro. I go, it's for fifth place, man. He goes, it's $100. I'll give it to you if you need it that bad. I'm like, oh man, Phil, right? So I just kept quiet because I knew how mad he was, and
Yeah.
he and I had never really had a run in.
No point to make it worse. Yeah.
Wait,
No.
you and Phil Giebler did not have much. You guys got a chance to, and we haven't
We
even
had
gotten
chance.
into
We
that.
had plenty of chances to race with each other. But to be honest with you, earlier in our lifetime, Phil was always, not always, but Phil was good early and was surrounded by the right people and was really fast right away. And he like I said, was one of the best, especially in that 1992 to the year 2000, era. Where, to be honest with you, for me personally, I mean, I had done some cool things, but I had not really got going real good and done as much as I have until probably after the year 2000, to be honest.
And I think that's that right there, because I mean, we actually.
But so to answer your question, Phil always had an edge on me, 9 times out of 10.
Wow.
Do you think maybe it was just a pent up aggression, just a little something in Maddie's soul that needed?
No, not at all. Like I said, Phil Giebler is one of my favorite peers and friends, and I have the absolute most respect for him. So that's why, like I said, he was so pissed. I didn't say much to him. I let him cool off, and I was gonna call him even the week after the race, but I knew how pissed he was, and I had to wait till I saw him again. Like, it seemed like a long time, probably a month or more.
I was about to say, luckily it was the off season, so he had plenty of time to cool off.
That's probably what it was. So it was maybe more than a month before I saw him again. I said, something, Phil? I said, I was 100% wrong, and I'm sorry. I didn't expect it to go that way. And
Matt Johnson,
class act. I remember catching Phil in practice that day for the actual race day, and I am gaining on him. I'm like, there's no way I should be catching Phil right now.
Dude, that guy's amazing.
And,
seriously. He makes, you talk about a guy that makes moves, Phil makes them work.
So I'm like, I knew going in people were measuring against me in the 206 that day because, I'd been a front runner at that point.
That's when we were getting ready. That's what me and Steven were getting ready to take down Mike Smith and his homeboy.
That's right.
Yeah. That was the year. That was the year that we were like, Steven says, yep, that money race is coming up. We all start getting geared up a few months before. I ain't about to let Mike Smith and his homeboy take us down.
Yeah, and then
we were out for you guys.
Awesome.
You guys were junk that week. We smoked you. You didn't
actually.
And I drove for Steven too, so that's
that first year.
Oh, the first time. Yeah, no, the first time.
The first year is the year that Giebler and I had the run in. And
poor Mike.
Right, you're right.
Poor Mike made half a lap.
Who won that year?
Jake Drew.
Yep.
It was him.
I got black
and then
flagged
Jake Hood.
on lap.
Oon.
So
1,
you were
2,
good then,
and
Derek.
3.
You were fast that weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was good. He
The
qualified.
boss over here
I qualified
folded like a cheap chair under pressure.
4. I qualified
track,
4th.
son of a.
And
always cutting the track.
I got a black flag. I got a black flag for spinning Jetson Leeser, who actually spun himself. He just panic broke into the first corner. He
That's
spun.
right.
There's
Now
video
I
that he
remember.
actually did
you
spin
And
himself.
then I went around him, and I went from
Long Beach to
I went
Carousel.
from Long Beach to Carousel,
Yep.
and I let all you guys by, but I didn't do it until up here between 5 and 4.
Oh, Mike.
And I'm
So it
like,
took him
by
up
the
to
letter of the rule.
He was trying to. I got
He was
no
trying to
comment
race
for
direct
that.
himself out of
He was
it.
race directing himself right out of it, trying to. That was like a gray area. This might work. It might
No.
not. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
go for it.
No.
Yeah, dude, you spun out in turn 1, and then you instead
No,
of
I didn't spin.
instead of taking the time to
No,
make
the other guy spun. I went around the spin.
but
I
you
did cut the track. I absolutely cut the track.
You'd have spun.
And I gave everything back. And the argument was that, well, what would have happened had you gone back in line? I'm
You'd
like,
have had a huge gap. Well, no,
I'd
there'd
have been
you
freaking
would've-
last. So it's
Yeah,
a goddamn money race. I'm not going to do that crap.
Hey, I admire you for trying. I'd have probably done the same thing.
So, anyways, this is what happens on the Fullcaster podcast: is that one thing leads to another,
Too much
leads to
bullshitting.
another.
Well-
no, there's no such thing as too much. We rock and roll.
Well, really quick.
You got some
Because it
subjects
was-
you
you
want to
got
touch
more?
on?
Because just because I'm catching.
I want to hear about the '90s.
I know, right?
The 90s
I'm
are
catching Phil in the.
Oh
in
yeah,
practice.
Derek's deal.
But I'm like, Jesus, there's no way I should be catching Phil this fast. I don't care if it's his
Choke's
first
gotta
time in
be
a
on.
206. And I come up to him and I pass him and leave him, and then he comes up to me behind in the scale line. I'm like, dude, what's going on? You look like shit out there. And he's like, I don't know, man. I look behind him, like, oh man,
Choke's
there
on.
you go. And he's like, you think I do that much? It's his choke. I'm
Yeah.
like, there's
Oh,
all your
yeah.
problems, dude. I'm like, don't touch a thing except touch that next time.
Yeah. For a go kart that has 9 horsepower or whatever the hell it's
He
got.
gave it about 6 that time.
Yeah, you can't be giving it up like that.
And then he figured it out later on.
It's like a
and,
restrictor. Yeah.
But
Oh man.
I will say this: the times that I've raced with Giebler, and that was our only real run. And again, we didn't have a ton of good battles or nothing like that. But the times that we did race each other, whether it was for the lead or 3rd, 4th, 5th, 10th, doesn't matter. When that guy passed me, more times than not, I was like, wow. How'd you do that?
Right.
Or he'd be one of those guys, that you'd drive it in on and make a pass, and his over-under was like, he'd drive by you on the over-under deal like you were stopped. And you actually thought you executed well, and you come up the corner, and here comes Bill, whoom, back up your, now on your outside, and you're just like, dude. Yeah, Phil's really, really good at, obviously. Their credentials speak for themselves.
Yeah.
No, it's Phil Giebler, right? He knows what the hell's going on.
I remember when he came back, too, after, taking some time off to do the race car thing, and I think he probably did that, what was it, A1GP or whatever back then.
Did the Indy thing.
Yeah, did the IndyCar stuff, and then he came back to Stars in 2005 with Barry Hill and Intrepid. And the first race, I think he finished 10th. I beat him. I think I was 6th or 7th. It was East versus West in Oklahoma. And I thought, I for sure, when I saw him, thought, yeah, this guy's going to be a threat, of course.
Right.
And
do you think it was him just kind of getting back into the kart?
Yeah, because between his huge amount of resources and his ability, and I'm sure with his determination by the next, long story short, he won the championship that year. So Phil Giebler's the real thing.
Yeah.
I tell you right now, if he ever signs up for Masters,
he did it already.
No, I mean, again, today. Like, if you were to do it again today,
I'd love
again,
to
me being
again.
selfish, like it's like if I see that you're on the entry list, I'm like, yeah, I'm in. I need to do it. Same thing with Gieb.
Gieb just would have to, like, if he decided to do it now, he'd have to. I think our category and our sport and everything as far as this time of day, you got to commit, and you got to really. I think you got to put your heart into it to run at the very top, point end of the field, especially if you go to a place like Vegas or whatever against Kip and Renato David and guys like that.
Yeah, no,
but there's no question if he puts his mind and his heart into it, he's going to be right there.
God, that'd be awesome. That'd be freaking sweet. We just got done touching on a bunch of really cool stuff that's a little more recent, but I want to ask you, how did it all get started? I mean, you said, okay, you right now you can be basically our race car driver, do karting, stuff like that. You're involved in the sport, thick and thin. How did it all start, though? Like, how young were you? What class? How did it get going? I mean, I know we had touched on your dad racing. Was your dad part of that? I mean, how did everything get going?
So, if we go back to the beginning, as far as my involvement or lifetime being around motorsport, it goes back to as far as I can remember. My grandpa and my uncles and obviously my dad would take us to places like Ascot Park, which used to be in Gardena. It was a half-mile oval, if I'm not mistaken, really fast. We were there for flat track motorcycle racing, sprint cars. They had stock car racing there. So I think as far back as I can remember would be Ascot. And I didn't race.
Going as a spectator,
as a
fan,
spectator,
yeah.
Yep. And we went as often as we could. And my uncle at one point in time was running a street stock at Ascot. So that was cool to go watch too. And all along, again, from as far back as I can remember, I've always been doing something, whether it be motorcycles or whatever. My dad had a street bike and a Corvette when I was, 2 years old. I'm sure prior to that as well. But point is, I've always been around and involved with something fast and something that runs on gasoline. So I rode dirt bikes a lot in the first 10 years of my life. I wanted to do some dirt bike racing, maybe be a supercross guy. Of course, I went to supercross. We used to go to MotoGP in Laguna Seca. My dad would take us there, and we'd watch guys like Kenny Roberts and Eddie Lawson. So
I could see you in a superbike suit.
Yeah, I wanted to. I was more interested in the dirt bike stuff,
Okay.
like motocross or supercross. And I had some friends that were doing it. And my dad had started karting like 89 or 90. He had just got his transmission shop going a year or two before that maybe, and he had wanted to have a go-kart and race a go-kart ever since he was a kid. But he still, when he got that first go-kart, he wasn't sure how serious or even knew and had the awareness of what the sport really was at that time.
Where was he running? Where were you guys at this point?
What city?
Yeah,
I was born and raised in Covina, California, just down the road. So
were you guys racing at that time?
At that moment when he first got going, he started racing at Adams at SoCal Sprinters and Tri-C Karters. And Tri-C ran on the second Sunday and SoCal ran on the fourth, and that was the deal. It was big back then too. He was in a category which was classified as novice. It was a multitude of different piston port engines, and I think the weight was maybe slightly different. At that time, it was open tire, so you could run a 5-inch, a 6-inch wheel, whatever, what have you. 50 inches wide. Most go-karts were American. You had the Cali kart, and I want to say right after he got going, and before I started, the Tony kart started making its way into the States, at least over here on the West.
Okay.
So, and there was a couple other go-karts too, like Jerry Freckleton had a go-kart bringing in called Dino. But most everything was American, like the stuff that you saw the majority of, like if now you see all OTK, out here you saw Invader, Emick, things like that. There were collaborations between guys like Mark Zartarian and Jeff Nelson, who's from Invader, another guy named Tom Nields, which was the original owner and starter of TNR Kart Sports, or TNR, Tom Nields Racing. So it was just a different time. He was racing there, and I was still doing the dirt bike thing, and then a lot of the weekends towards basically the end of my motocross thing and his beginning of his karting stuff, he'd be at the go-kart races, and I'd go out with my dad's friends and their kids or buddies or whatever to do my dirt bike thing. And he started to enjoy it, and I'd say about a year after him doing it, he basically was like, hey, why don't you come and try and do this? It's pretty cool, blah, 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 what have you. I said, all right.
How old were you?
Let's see, back then, well, if my dad started in 1990, I was 10. So that's when I got in my first go-kart, I was 10 years old.
Were you racing the bike, or were you just kind of driving?
I just rode all the time. I mean, I actually had a CR 125 when I was 9.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's a bit of a bike, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those deals where if I fell, I'd have to flag someone down. I couldn't get back on unless somebody held the back of the bike up while I kicked it over and took back off.
Again, you not being a very big person.
Right, yeah. I don't know what my dad was thinking. I'll never forget.
He's like, oh, he'll grow into it.
Oh, dude, we rode by a yard sale. Yard sale on the way back from doing some Christmas shopping or whatever I think it was, or no, because it was right before Glamis and Thanksgiving. But whatever we were doing, we rode past a yard sale, and there's this dirt bike sitting there. There's a Honda with all race tech shit on it for $400. And
let's get it.
He buys it, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's cool. He's like, right on. So I come home from school a couple days after that, and I got all new riding gear, and I had other dirt bikes before that and stuff, but I had all new riding gear, and there was a paddle tire sitting there for this thing, and I'm going, what's going on? Why'd you buy me all this gear? He's like, well, that's for your new bike. And I'm like, that bike ain't mine. He's like, oh yeah, that's your new motorcycle. I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? Yeah, we'll put a paddle on it, and we're going to Glamis in a couple of weeks for Thanksgiving. Oh, all right, yeah, okay, let's go.
Jeez.
So when I'd get off the thing, we had this old panel Calypso motorhome, and when I'd get off the bike, I'd just sidestep it like a bicycle and just stuff the handlebar right into the side of the Calypso. But if it was time to go and I was out in the desert by myself or whatever, out in the dunes, and I fell, I'd have to wait for somebody to ride by, flag them down. They'd hold the fender. I'd kick it over and then take back off.
That reminds me of two things that are kind of right along the same lines. One is when I first learned how to ride a bike, just a regular bicycle. I was like 4 or 5, and I'm not doing no training wheels. No, that I don't want to look dumb. So myself and my cousin, who was a couple years older than I, we both learned how to learn. We both learned how to ride bikes at Sand Lake in Oregon. It was a campground for dunes and stuff. Well, they had these logs along the side, so the only way I could get on the bike and off the bike without falling was with the log. So to your point about the Calypso, that's the only way I could stop. Is there had to be a stop, but I'm going to fall off this damn thing unless I use the log.
You had to make sure you got her docked.
Exactly. So there's you could see myself and my cousin, a couple other people, all the bikes are along the log. The other thing you're talking about, how big that it's the 125 and also the kinds of crap. My when I was 12, the very first motorsport thing that I did was a 3-wheeler. It was a Yamaha Tri-Z, so a 350, and it was I can't remember if it was. I think my dad bought it or did a trade or did something like that. Well,
it wasn't. I had one of them Honda 70s, a 3-wheeler.
There you go. Yeah, so this is a Tri-Z 350. It's a full adult freaking deal.
Oh, they're gnarly. My dad had one of them 250s. That's kind of how the whole
the
dirt bike.
ATCs
The real ATC with the blue seat and the ones that killed people and such.
That's
that they outlawed in 88 or whatever it was.
Exactly. My uncle had an ATC, a Honda ATC. So
that's how my whole dirt bike thing got going, because he had a sand rail and he had this ATC that he'd go ride with his buddies. And back then, I mean, nobody wore a helmet or nothing like that. I mean, even like backing up just a little bit as far as being around motorsport and motorcycles and cars and stuff. When I was honestly 3-4 years old, no exaggeration, I rode on the front of my dad's Honda 750 down the freeway and operated the throttle while he sat, behind me and made sure we didn't crash. And that was
naturally.
Yeah.
You seen the memes about I lived through the 80s. This is nothing.
It's like no helmets, drinking
ramp.
water out of the hose.
Yeah,
doing ramps and crap like that. So
Can you imagine COVID-19 in the 80s?
Let it ride, baby. Let's go.
On.
We'd all be immune.
Yeah. You think?
This Yamaha Tri-Z though, it wasn't a stock one. Like I don't know. I had to ask my dad how we ended up getting this thing, because it was an enduro bike. So the person who had it before, a race team or whatever, they raced this Tri-Z. They raced this 3-wheeler, and we purchased it in the mid-90s. Like I'm 2 years younger than you are, so I'm 12 and I was 11 and 12, so it was like 93 or so. And it's so tall.
Yeah.
Because it's an enduro bike to go through like water splashes.
Got some clearance
and stuff like that, right? So it's all and 3-wheelers, they've got three wheels. They want to tip over if you don't know what the hell you're doing because you're a tiny little kid. And to try to slow me down, it's a thumb throttle, not a twist throttle on those things. So it's a thumb throttle, and basically it's a slide. It's hooked up to a throttle cable that goes back to the carb. Well, my dad opened up the throttle box for the slide, and he whittled out a piece of wood to stick in there as basically a throttle stop. And the more that I would get better,
duct tape around the hand grip would have probably done just as well.
So they did that. Well, then eventually, I end up flipping this thing at some point because I cut too hard or whatever. And they were trying to slow me down. They eventually go, "Oh, you're doing pretty good." They take the wooden piece out. They said,
"Back up."
They just like, "Don't shift," to try to make sure I would go slower.
Sure.
So I'm just. In first gear, I'll blow the damn thing up.
Oh, man.
My first weekend on the 125, I seized it. I think it either ran out of water or something, but I killed it. I mean, I rode pretty hard. I was never really afraid to go fast once I got adapted and comfortable, whatever it was I was driving or riding. And I think that was part of the thing that got me into karting as well, is my dad knew that I wasn't going to be the next McGrath or nothing. I'm not trying to say that, but I was pretty good. And I was fast and whatnot. But my dad, I had friends that were already racing. They were already starting to get hurt. And my dad was really enjoying and digging the go-karting thing. And he had been doing it for a year and started to get help. Actually, one of the first guys he started with was Jim Barry.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah, back in the day. So he had early success. My dad's one of them guys that's got real good natural raw ability. He's an athlete without question. So he did well pretty quick. And so he was pretty pumped up about it. And he's like, "Come on, let's go do this. I'm going to get," I think by then he had got his second go-kart, and he was going to give me his old one and said, "Let's go try this. And if you don't like it, then you can go dirt bike racing or whatever you want to do. And if not, we go from there." So
turns out.
Yeah. And it's funny. My first day was at Adams, and you guys will laugh. I'll tell this. My first lap, I don't think I even made it around the little Monza, the hairpin turn, because I was going so slow trying to sort things out, right? And that's what's weird about me is especially when I was younger, I was a little more timid, and when I ever got on or into something, I would really creep up onto it, at least for that first little bit. And I like I said, I didn't even let the thing idle hard enough to get around the damn little Monza. So the best part is I'm stuck out there. They bring me back to the pits. My dad lifts me up by my suit and picks me up in the air and goes, "You better get out there and drive this thing now, or you're you're embarrassing me," he told me. So I sat the next thing out. My little brother, who's actually only less than 2 years younger than me, gets in it and spins the thing out, leaving the pits when he gets to the sandbox because he don't want none,
But see what happened to older brother.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a funny story because it's interesting or funny to tell that story and if that was me now watching that kid go around the track, to think that I'd have done what I've done and been fortunate enough to have won the races that I have, you'd almost never see that coming.
Right.
I mean, by the end of that day, I was comfortable, and of course, I did obviously enjoy it. And
we had a hell of an incentive.
Yeah, and so So by the end of that day, I was comfortable, and it was something that I wanted to continue doing, and I stuck with. So my dad made me practice for over 6 months, probably just shy of a year before I got down to a certain lap time, and he'd actually let me race. So
no matter what, though, racing was in the cards for you guys.
I think so.
Your
Yeah.
dad
I mean,
was
we
already
never.
doing it, right?
What's that?
Mike was already doing it. Your dad.
My dad was already
racing.
karting. Yeah, my dad started
Would you
karting,
go
like
there
I said, in
and
1990.
watch him do
I
the
watched him a
races?
couple times. Yeah, I was always, like I said, I was always busy riding dirt bikes. That's what I really enjoyed and wanted to do. And, I mean, I had watched him race a few times, but I wasn't like the kid that was there at the track with his dad every weekend. Once I started racing, then I went all the time. If there was an out of town race, like I didn't even get to run my first IKF race for the first couple of years. He'd had me on a program where it was like, okay, first you're gonna have to go this lap time to get to race. Then you're gonna have to start finishing here before we're gonna take you like to back then, which was IKF. That was like the big deal.
So he had kind of already built kind of your own stepladder program a little bit.
Yeah. I think that for him, just depending on what everybody wants out of everything, right? I think for him to spend the money to go try and run against the better guys or the best guys on, this side of the U.S. in an IKF region race back then had to make sense, Not to mention, my program was very different than obviously almost all of them now. And let's be honest, it's just a different time. I mean, the same thing could be the karters that are, beyond my generation can probably obviously for sure say the same thing. As things evolve, it seems to, for lack of an argument, get easier for the next generation, if you will. Well, my dad had his own mechanic who he didn't pay. It was my uncle. And when I went to the track for the first time, the first thing we had to do was get the trailer unloaded and clean up all the stuff. And he told me that day, he goes, if you want to do this, he goes, you're going to have to learn to work on your own stuff and you're going to have to take care of it. And that's the deal. So I was always my own mechanic. I did plenty of nut and bolt stripping and, all the things you do through the trial and error of learning. And I feel like he didn't want to throw too much at me, for one, maybe to burn me out, and for two, unless I was ready for it. So
as you start going racing, right? And we're in the 90s now, and just because I know we're close to the same age, so I can kind of understand the ages you already are. Through the 90s, you're through your teens.
Yeah.
Right? So you're doing the school thing and then going racing. What kind of races are you doing? Are you sticking with, like you said, you had to get a lap time before you went racing, and then you had to do local before you go beyond that.
Yep.
You're going through the 90s and whatnot. To be honest with you, the stuff that I've read about or I know about you doesn't happen until we start clicking over to the 2000s. So,
and that's like what I said earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, again, as time went on throughout the 90s, things started to evolve. I mean, in 93, we showed up at the racetrack in Santa Maria this time with like a 28-foot nice enclosed trailer. Well, that was probably one of the biggest ones there. And the only reason we had one that big was at this moment, it was myself, my brother, my dad, and I had two uncles that also raced. And we hauled all their stuff, and it was a small operation. We were very well hooked up with K&P Manufacturing. So we stocked a lot of parts, chains, consumable items, and stuff like that. We sold a lot of tires. So we needed the trailer. And next thing you know, guys like Brancati came out with, a fifth wheel. And then the next guy shows up with this, that, or the other. And then I guess what I'm getting at is when I first started, or especially my dad, there weren't many trailers much at all to be seen. It was a lot of pickup trucks. Some guys had box trucks. And, of course, some guys had trailers too. But it's not obviously what it is today. And
I remember that back home at Portland Karting Association. Like the big teams, like watch out for those guys. More well-off people than we were at. Myself and my dad out of the back of the F-250.
Yeah.
But with the teams, Phil Fow, they've got a box truck and also the kind of stuff. CMC's got a long trailer, right? We had the LaPointes were there, and they had their deal, and so it was you knew kind of the class.
Yeah, I mean,
you had the
by
trailer
the time,
and whatnot, you were or what, for me it was. Wow, man, they got plastic on their carts.
Right.
They have plastics. That was something else.
So, to answer your question, back then, I had the desire. I had some of, the ability to do what I needed to do. Like I said, as you maybe know, I won local races and stuff like that. I had never won a big regional race till I was like 16. So I think, I don't want to say I was at a disadvantage, but I didn't have, when I went to the track with my dad raced at the highest level at that time. So my dad wasn't there to help, with tuning or wrenching or, and if he did get a chance to watch, back then it was like, oh, it looks like you need to drop a tooth or something.
Everyone's running their own program.
Yeah,
now.
well, you had a lot of thought, like Phil and his dad, Giebler, they had a really good program in place and they were surrounded by really good people. They had good material too. And there were a lot of other operations similar to that where I was kind of more on my own. And there was a few other guys that operated in a similar fashion as myself, but it wasn't very many.
Right.
So once I had gotten mature and old enough, and then also been fortunate enough to get some outside help or some within the industry help with material and stuff like that, that's when I started to really show what I could do. Because for a while I was always on, secondhand equipment or stuff like that. I didn't have a good solid program in place. I had help, sponsor-wise and stuff like that, but I just didn't have the direction that I needed to do, what I could do.
When you say material, you're talking about
the
rides
mostly,
themselves?
Yeah,
mostly
the chassis and stuff like that, and or, just the whole package.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like when I got to be about 14 or so, there were some really fast junior racers that I was going up against that would come and run like SoCal. And there was a time where we were actually going to Saugus at like 6:30 in the morning. And then the races had to be over and out of there by like 2 o'clock on a Saturday because they had a swap meet or something after. So we'd run Saugus in the morning. We'd go to Paris for the night race. Okay.
Wow.
Practice start there at like 4 or 5. And then Sunday sometimes, and it didn't fall like this every weekend, but there were certain weekends where on Sunday morning you'd have to be at Riverside for SoCal.
Just be booked, yeah.
Yeah, so I think the sport, some will argue about when it was big and when it was small and this, that, and the other. The sport was at a high, at least for my environment, was at a high level of competition from, I'd say, 94 to 97, 98 were some pretty intense years. And there was, that was a time where we were going away from the, chrome bumpers to having plastic noses and people starting to change axles. We're now going from American 1.25" axles or whatnot to a 40 millimeter or 30 millimeter or even 35, 45, 50 mil axles. So people are starting to change axles around and
evolution of the sport.
Yeah.
I mean,
when I first got going, and even whether I was at the front end or not, you didn't see guys changing axles and stuff like that. They'd maybe do the motor dance. And again, back at one point in time, it was open tires. So you had guys that would try a few different compounds on tires and stuff like that and make some chassis adjustments. But I'm talking like front end width or Ackerman or something, relatively simple.
There wasn't minor.
Yeah. Moving weight around, stuff like that.
I was talking to Steven about it when we had him on, and I'm in 94.
I mean, the go-karts back then were 50 inches wide.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what we were saying is that the biggest change we were doing is width. And I was doing junior 1.4 cycle at the time in 94, so it was basically like, it's wide.
I wouldn't say it was more driver dependent back then, but I think there was a lot more of you driving around the symptom versus having the luxury of coming in and saying, hey, you know what, we need to put in this axle or try these wheels or put a different seat, if you will, or
is adaptation.
You got what you got.
You kind of got what you got and you need to adapt. Yeah. So moving down the road, as I got to be in better and better equipment, I think it made it that much easier for me,
Right.
In those 90s, what was you said what it had been until you were maybe 16 before you got a regional. What was the crowning achievement of your teen years?
Well, my first full season, I did win the Tri-C Cars Championship, and I won a couple of races, so that was cool.
When's that?
92. And in 90, so I'd won like 92, 93, 94.
As a junior?
Yep. There was a year or two when we ran SoCal Sprinters when, every weekend for the whole season, I had to race against Rocky Moran Jr., Tyler Walker, who some of us may or may not know, even let's see, his brother Ben was really fast. Kevin Christensen was up there. There were a lot of good guys. It was always a pretty good scrap to be inside that top 5, and to obviously be at the point end of that was an achievement at that time, at least especially for me. So I had got to win, a couple of those races, but that was definitely, I would say, I mean, for me, it was a lot of fun, and it was a time where I was starting to like realize that I was going to be all right as far as a competitor,
Gotcha.
Because you can go out there and win, smaller races and stuff like that, and it's great, but then it starts to get a little easier, and then, you go to these bigger races with your dad, and you watch the big dogs run, and you're like, well, if I was in that race, I'd,
more real.
Because when I went to my first big race, I mean, shoot, I was outside the top 10, I think.
Right.
So Matt, in the 90s there, you had some success, certainly locally and as a junior, whatnot. Was there like before we get into the 2000s, like I said, that's kind of when I know definitely things started kicking ass for you. Is there like a point or some kind of turning point where you went from doing solid to now you're a front runner?
Yeah, so like I told you before, I had involvement and a relationship with K&P Manufacturing pretty much since the beginning, because their shop was also like local down the street from where I grew up.
For those of us who don't know, like myself, K&P, what is
K&P Manufacturing was the West Coast Bridgestone importer or distributor, and they were also one of the longest original standing go-kart shops out of Azusa. They manufactured the Bug go-kart that some people know about. I know Mike Manning at one point in time ran for them back in the 70s and 80s. So that's who they are. They had everything from real competition go-karts to fun karts, mini bikes, and basically everything in between. So that was cool. And they had just started to bring in the Burrell.
Oh, wow.
And I had a European car before that through a guy named Jerry Woods, who brought in a go-kart called Mac Minarelli. And that was like the precursor to me starting to really be a threat. Once I was on that go-kart, I was definitely gone from like a top 10 or 7 guy in regional competition to a consistent top 3 or 5 guy. So fast forward onto like 96, I move into senior. That Mac Minarelli thing was coming to a close, and I had got this opportunity with K&P to drive a Burrell. So I got on a Burrell. I didn't really have a firm engine program in place, but I had good guys like Doug Fleming and stuff helping me. And
what was the package at this time?
This was KT100.
Okay.
So they had, when you raced at IKF, they had 2 scheduled days of racing with separate classes on each day. So you'd run like, I personally would run like heavy on one day and light on the next. Wow. 50 inches wide, spec SL Bridgestone tire, and obviously the 100cc Yamaha with the flavor of the week in terms of the selection on the pipe. But I had good relationships with RLV, and K&P, like I said, put me on the Burrell, and I had just started to get myself into a position where I was surrounded by the right people. I just needed a solid engine program, and that's when Mark Zartarian got a hold of me from High Rev Engineering. And as soon as I got the support that I needed from him as far as the engine stuff goes, I was really quick. One thing about Mark that some people may or may not know about him is he used to actually drive as well, and he's a bigger sized dude, but he's one of the smoother drivers I had ever seen. I mentioned I could talk about all these different guys that were really good, but he was also one of them. He's got over 10 Grand National Championships himself. He ran in some classes that were more fit for the bigger, taller guys like him, and he was the master of it. He was really good, and he's very, very technical and very savvy when it came to chassis and engine development. I mean, the guy at one point was working with TKM, excuse me, and he basically had them reconfigure their whole entire design on the engine after getting his input.
Wow.
So he had been able to provide me with some stuff that was really, good, obviously, and advantageous to have. And then he also helped groom me as a driver and as a tuner because he understood all of it, So I think that was a big turning point for me. And that's with him behind me is when I won my first 3 IKF races, which all happened to come 3 in a row.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
So that was cool.
Did you basically go from like being towards the sharp end to holy crap, Matt just won 3 in a row?
Yeah, kind of, because I would say realistically, there were times that I ran for the lead and won a heat race or something here and there, but I never did close the deal. And then finally it came at Adams. It was a race that obviously I wouldn't forget, and I ran for the lead with the leader, and the two of us had gotten away, and I had gotten to a point where I said, I knew what I had, and I thought if I did everything the right way, I could win the race. So I just decided to hang behind him until the white flag came out. I knew who I was running against, and I knew he wasn't going to defend. Mm-hmm. So sure enough, the white flag came out. I made the pass, and
do you remember who it was?
I won the race. Of course I do. It was one of my best friends, Kevin Christensen. They call him Camel. So, and he was like one of the very best at that time. He was already an IKF expert with more than 2 Grand National Championships, and he had run international races and actually had done some Skip Barber stuff and had very good success. He was really good too, and he started the same time I did. The difference between him and I was his dad didn't race, but his older brother did. But this kid was a worker, man. I mean, like, I work hard, and I have a very good work ethic, and a lot of that is thanks to karting, and some of it is probably thanks to this guy I'm talking about now, because we'd go spend time with each other during the summer, and first of all, the guy had a huge lawn to mow once a week with he had the opportunity or the benefit of having a riding lawnmower, but you needed it for the damn golf course size lawn. And then but he worked on go-karts, and the kid was just good. I mean, to shorten it up, he built his own engines from the time he was 14. Doug Fleming taught him. He worked over at Pitts.
Wow.
And so you talked about someone that was very technically involved and very well-rounded. He was one of them, and again, he was one of the best during his time for sure.
And roughly, what year is this where you're getting this three in a row win?
96.
So
nope. 96, 97 maybe.
And you're a senior.
97.
And you're senior racing now. So roughly how old? 17? 17.
Yep, I was 17. So it took me till I was 17 years old to win my first real, what I would consider a big race.
And
you know what I mean?
There
were 30-plus guys on the grid. Kevin Manning, Ron Charteau, my dad was one of them. The list goes on. A lot of good guys.
Was that a thing, by the way? Going from being a junior and then going on and racing against Pops?
Oh, yeah. We crashed. We did it all. Yeah.
And you had said that he did not work on your stuff.
Nope.
Right? So he's doing his own
He didn't
gig.
even work on his own.
Okay. So, and he had a mechanic. Okay,
Yep.
fair. But what my point was that it's the Matt Johnson show is the Matt Johnson show. It's not like it's, Dad's hooking me up or whatever, right? So it is, you guys are definitely competitors.
Yeah,
under the same tent still at this point?
No, of course, yeah. Well, I wouldn't say of course, but
tent?
yeah, we were under the same, operation all the way until I was probably 18 or 19, at which point I took a little break and came back about a year later and did it on my own without him, because at that point he had gone to Irwindale and started racing Roundy Round basically from the time they opened. But I still, like, my life consisted of going to school in the morning, getting off at 2 o'clock, coming straight home. I didn't, go and party with my friends. I mean, I went to weekend parties during high school and all that other stuff, but when school was out, I had to go home because it was my job to wash that stupid big trailer, get it ready, get it all cleaned on the inside, and get both of our go-karts ready to go. So that was my responsibility from the time I was, 12 years old till I was moved out of my parents' house and he wasn't racing go-karts no more.
So I think that's a good segue. So basically, the 90s are you coming of age, basically, as a karter.
Cutting my teeth.
Right. And then you said you took a break. Was that you wanted to take a break? Were you getting burnt out? And you said only about a year, so it wasn't very long, but you took a break for a little bit, and then, as you say, your dad starts doing the roundy round thing. Yeah,
because like I said, for me, from the age of, we'll just say 12 till, 18, the hustle was real.
Right.
It was as many as 3 different racetracks a weekend, working on the stuff every single night after school because, like I said, we raced basically every weekend. And, we didn't have a lot of money. My dad's a small business owner. My mom was a paralegal and a legal secretary as I was growing up, and so they went to work until 6 o'clock at night, and I did what I did at home. And I just... I'd always had to come up with my own sponsors. My dad, of course, paid the majority of my running expenses, but I had been on a deal as far as a frame goes since I was 12 or 13. I had to do what I could, whether it meant going to work off my bill over at go-kart shops for my engine work and stuff like that. So I had always needed to do my part in finding sponsorship, retaining and maintaining those relationships and keeping good solid rapport with all my partners. And then of course the physical work side of it, let alone all the driving, the travel, etc. So by the time I was like 17, 18, I was coming to a point where, okay, Dad's not going to pay for Matt's racing anymore. It's, if you really want to do this, you're going to find a way to do it on your own. So I think I was at that transition point where I wasn't sure if, not necessarily not sure, but I wasn't sure if that's what I was going to do or not, So I started to
getting
go.
Out of high school
getting out of high school.
Well,
here. and during that time, I had moved out of my parents' house and got my own apartment. By the time I was like,
bills are real.
Yeah, the bills are real and everything like that. And I think what got me back going again was a friend of mine had come over, and he was telling stories about go-kart racing. And he had been gone for a few years, and he had just come back. And at that time, the Formula Y class was big, which was a direct drive Yamaha. And he was talking about how he ran that class, and he ran another class maybe, and telling me about, all these good races he's having with names that I know. And I'm like, wow, man, that sure sounds like fun. I'd like to go racing, And at that time, I had a decent income and money saved, and the bills weren't really a worry. So he goes, well, I'll tell you what. He goes, come show up to this race out at Paris, and if you want to race, I'll let you. I got a go-kart, a motor, just pay for your entry. And I'm like, well, that don't sound too bad.
I get used to this.
Yeah, well, so I showed up, and I didn't practice or nothing. I showed up like Sunday for the Sunday race, and I went Saturday the day before, and I kind of scoped things out and looked around, and Jeremy Drew was there and a few other heavy hitters that I was going to have to race against, and I called my dad on the phone that night. I go, I don't know if I should do it, Dad. I said, I haven't driven in
kind of the deep end of the pool there.
Yeah, well, I probably hadn't driven since what was that? That was 2001, probably and it was like right around this time actually. So it was probably like late 2000 was the last time I drove. And I said, I don't know, what if I'm not very fast? And I want to say even for the year 2000, that year that I raced, and even 99, it was the same thing. I still raced, like I said earlier, but I did like 2-3 races a year, max. Right. One-offs here and there.
It wasn't full-on championship status, get after it.
Nope. So, long story short, I showed up that next day and I won the damn pre-final, and and I ended up finishing second in the final, and Jeremy won. But
did that solidify that we're back in the game?
Yeah. And I was like, you know what? I think I want to go back racing again. So again, I reached out for some help, and I did the deal, and that was actually also facilitated back through KMP again, and that was actually on a new version, obviously updated bug chassis.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
in the early 2000s.
2001, yeah.
Wow.
So from there,
I honestly didn't know that bugs were still rolling at that point.
Yeah, and so from there, I had to go get one more punch in Reno to qualify for the Grand Nationals, because I'm like, we're going racing now. Let's get it, right? So they were at Santa Maria.
You got to think about carrots, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
You love those big carrots.
I do. And so I went and got a punch up in Reno. KMP facilitated that for me, got me a flight and everything, and that was cool. Went and ran with some guy who had something we could drive to do what we had to do. And then I went to Santa Maria, and it didn't go as well as I'd hoped it did. But after that is when I got hooked back up with Mark Zartarian. And at that time, he was on his own go-kart that he had designed, and it was manufactured by Mike Wilson. And so at that point, from that point forward, all the way through 2005, I bled blue with Mark. And I was on his chassis and on his go-karts, his engines. And every free moment I had, because now obviously things were different from me in terms of the between weekend schedule, I would be down at high rev, helping run the dyno, take engines apart, clean them up, whatever I had to do to help to get to the goal,
Yeah.
And that's, again, I owe a lot of my credit to Mark for the driver and the actual all-around racer that I am today, because what I got from him was the direction that I needed. You know what I mean? I was it's funny, they did a thing about me on eKarting News years ago, probably '04 or something, and '03 I think, and Mark quoted that when he had got a hold of me, that I was like an untamed bull with enough testosterone for 5 drivers. I just needed the direction and
Right.
the tools to achieve what I was trying to do.
Was he
You know,
right?
and he gave me that. I mean, I owe a lot of my success to him. I mean, one year in 2004, we participated in 36 races, we won 27, and we qualified on the pole 22 times.
Wow.
Man.
For a guy who doesn't know how to qualify. over
Yeah,
here.
I used
Yeah.
to know how to qualify. 5 Grand National Championships, 5 regional championships, all between WK and IKF. It was a unforgettable season for sure.
So before you got hooked back up with Mark, it's easy. He definitely had the stuff right. He had the tools, like you're saying.
Yep.
As far as the direction goes, was yours way different than his, or just was it? It was kind of the same goal and just a different
Dude,
way how to get there.
honestly, and it's again not to discredit my upbringing or my family or anything like that, because I had everything I had ever wanted. I never really, we weren't poor. Obviously, we were go-kart racing. Okay, we our bills were paid. There by no means were we poor, but we didn't have the money that's a lot of these guys I raced against had. So therefore, we didn't have the effort. We didn't have the program, and for my dad, like I said, as a racer, we'll bring him out here right now, and he'll probably, I wouldn't bet against him to go maybe a quicker lap time than I might right now, especially like in a 206 or something. The guy's
Right.
63 years old, But
I raced with him.
Yeah.
I can attest.
but I could tell you this: you better not count on him to get that go-kart ready or come back in and tell you exactly what you need to do to it to make it go fast. You know what I mean? And when my dad got involved in racing, he was over 30 years old. So at that point for him, it was nothing more than a hobby, right?
Yeah.
And again, with his natural ability and his sort of carefree way that he goes about racing, if you will, I had no direction. I really didn't. I mean, of course, my dad can tell me, hey, he coached me to the best that he could based on what he knew and what he knew how to do.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Which everyone's dad
my
does,
racing IQ, say 2004 prior, I mean, obviously 2004 is when it really ramped up a lot. I mean, he was probably coming long before that. But just say prior to 2000 was like less than half of what it is now or even back then. So I didn't have it, I really didn't. I didn't understand how much real work it really took from, the last nut and bolt on back.
Right.
To the recipe for success does not come easy. That's all I know for sure.
Now,
Yeah.
So you basically, while you were involved in racing and whatnot, you never had this like drive to be a race car driver. It was like, I love racing. Like, racing is fun. I like doing this. But there was never, like, again, it started out with a motocross deal, right? But did you never had this drive? Like, when I was a little kid
Yeah, okay.
watching on TV, I'm like, I want to be a race car driver.
So-
When I'm not know that I've
Sure.
heard that so far
So
from you.
this isn't the first time I've obviously ever had to answer this question, and I wondered or kind of knew it would probably come up, right? Absolutely, did I want to be a race car driver? For sure. I mean, probably from the time I was 13, 14 years old till I was 16 or 17, did I want to be a professional race car driver? What kind? I don't know. What's the first step to head that direction? Don't ask me, because I don't know. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Right.
And or, there was no plan. There was no, I couldn't tell you which way was up or what the roadmap was really to get there. Now, of course, friends I grew up with, guys like Buddy Rice, again, another guy who had a short stint and a pretty successful stint at that was Tyler Walker, Jason Bowles, Rocky, Phil Giebler, Patrick Long, all those guys I grew up with, and I know well. And Kevin Harvick, he's a little bit before my time. But, I think had we the resource in terms of financial resource, and had we been surrounded by the right people, and I mean, again, back then isn't what today is either in terms of information and how rapid we're receiving the information we get
For sure.
nowadays and the knowledge we have. But looking back, there was no way. Not only that would we never be able to afford it, I wouldn't be able to, like some guys now say, if I had a kid that was here that had no money and wanted to really take a shot at going to run and race, you tell them, okay, well, you need to go move to Indianapolis or North Carolina and get a job sweeping the floors or this like that. While that idea may have been available to me or available at all in general, that pitch, I never really thought about it, nor did I ever even have that conception to take that shot, you know?
Well, man, like when I was a teenager, and it was probably like 13 to 15, I'm like, I really want to make a shot at this. And I really started putting in effort to karting. At that time, I mean, all we could afford was indoor. So I was just doing K1 and whatnot. But man, it just, when you're not involved in sport, like my family did was just spectate. You know, you were fortunate enough your dad was able to do it, and he had some kind of idea how the world was, or that industry. Man, I was just a kid wandering aimlessly and figuring it out on my own. My parents were involved enough to try to point me in the right direction and come up with ideas and stuff. But if you don't have any idea, it's such a vast industry to just get lost in and kind of spin in circles.
And at that time, there really weren't. See, now we're in a world where every kid that shows up here is going to be the next Tony Stewart or you know, Sebastian Vettel or Verstappen or whoever you want to say, right?
It's a lot more accessible, yeah.
It's a lot more accessible. I think there's a lot more money in circulation and as far as our sport goes in terms of the environment and the competitors that we deal with now. But there's you can actually come in with a plan, you know,
right,
and say, okay, here's the path that you want to take. The map's laid out for you. This is what it's going to cost, and on you go.
Yeah, to your point. I mean, I guess in the '90s, there's not a lot of
there wasn't a
road
lot of
maps.
That. No, there was not a lot of that.
How many
going
people
on.
have gone from karting or from nothing to motorsports to blank?
Right.
Whether it be F1 or
like
for America, IndyCar or what have you.
Sure. And Buddy, for example, is one guy that worked the program who also didn't come from a lot of money. He was fortunate enough to go get a job at Barber out there or whatever. What is that deal in Arizona?
Oh,
Bob Bondurant. He worked at Bondurant.
Yeah.
He worked at Bondurant, and from there he just chipped away. And I don't want to say he got lucky because, you know, luck sometimes is a culmination of preparation and timing. But that put him, you know, in position to keep moving forward and get to where he did in his career. And so he made it on talent and a little bit of luck for sure, and hard work. But I mean, like, nobody else, nobody had a plan.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So and I don't. Who knows what it could have, should have been? I mean, had things have been different, and my dad didn't want to continue racing through his 40s and stuff like that, maybe we would have went to Irwindale, and I'd have been the guy driving, and we'd be having a different conversation now. But I don't regret any of it. You know, I think now, especially that I've done some other stuff and I've been exposed to a lot of different types of racing, and I know what goes into all of it. I love go-karting. You know, unless I was being paid a very nominal wage to do some other form of motorsport, I wouldn't want to.
Yeah.
You know,
Grabbing a gear a little bit here. So you're on the map, if you will, here in 2004. Right, you've won some things.
I say that
Matt
time.
Johnson
Go Racing magazine was pumping, and Vroom and whatever, and so you're
in your early 20s.
Yeah, I'm 20,
early to mid 20s.
24, winning a lot of stuff, and
you're bang on at this point. Are you still thinking you're going like we have a shot at going cars? Is that still in the game? Or
I don't think so, because by then I was already. By then I had a real job, working as a store manager for a tire company in Las Vegas. So, and I had, you know, normal bills, and I'm 24 years old. So at this point in my life, people are asking me what I'm going to do, and I say, you know, by now more guys are obviously becoming race car drivers. There's a little bit more of a path, if you will, and
ones that you directly were with, like
sure,
your group.
Yep, but I could see it already that some of them were already starting to migrate back because, you know, eventually your luck or your money runs out. So, when people would ask me this type of question, I would explain to them that for me to become a race car driver is probably unrealistic at my age and what I have behind me in terms of money.
Yeah.
I said, but if I can grow up to be like, once I'm in my 30s or something, or say 30 years old, I think I used as a mark to own a house and, potentially have a family and a normal routine.
Have your life settled.
Yeah,
where you
kind
want
of
it to
have my
be.
life settled down and then still be able to go race something cool on Saturday night, basically like my dad was doing. How can you complain about that? I mean,
Yeah.
and at that time, my dad was winning a lot of shit too at Irwindale, and he was a very obviously a competitor, and things were going well for him on both ends of his life. So I had that to kind of go off of, and
there's your roadmap.
well, yeah, I'm
Right
like,
there.
you know what? How could I not be happy with something like that? So that's at that point in my life was what I thought would be, would have me to be content.
Two quick questions, and they're kind of butt up against each other, but also one goes into the other. So we're talking about your early to mid 20s, 2004 thereabout, and then I know directly because I've been around for the 30s, Matt, like the last 5 or so
Sure.
years, and that racing and the accolades and the success you've had lately. If you don't mind, what's the transition from, and not only the transition, but what is maybe the crowning achievement, if you will, or some really cool things? Your early 20s, your top level at the senior level in karting. In those early 20s, what's like the big thing or the crowning achievement, like I said, and then does it stay just like that for the next 10, 15 years, or
Right.
is there a transition? How's that look?
So after '04, I had pretty much done everything I could, right, in 100cc, competition, and at that time, Buddy and I had not talked for a couple of years because we had gone our separate ways and been busy doing our own things, But we always had each other's phone numbers and whatever, what have you. So that same year, he won the 500. So somehow we got to talking again, and he had actually at that time also owned a go-kart shop, and then eventually became the Tony Kart importer.
Wow.
That's kind of jumping ahead because that's like 4 or 5 years later. But at that time in '04, he had a relationship with the current importer at that time for Tony Kart. So he and I were talking a bit, and I was actually inspired and wanted to go race the Stars Series with OTK for 2005. And I could not, we just couldn't come to, I guess, an agreement or neutral ground on the terms of the deal. So that didn't unfortunately end up happening, but that's part of what got us hanging out and talking again. So in '05, I stuck with Zartarian, and we went and did the Stars campaign. And of course, things were different for me in terms of the package and the driving, which you're familiar with.
Are you doing the ICA at that point?
ICA, yep,
Yeah.
yep. And like I said, my first race was actually that one I talked about earlier in Oklahoma, where I finished 6th or 7th, and it wasn't bad because for 1-4A was there, Patrono, guys from Europe that were really factory guys and that were really obviously good were there.
There's a lot of that going on with the Stars package being basically emulating what was happening over in Europe at the
For
same
sure.
time with ICA,
Yeah.
ICC,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
on.
yeah. So again, Mark was a very resourceful guy, has a long time and whatnot in the sport. So we had good stuff, but I don't think I could get it to its full potential, especially at my first race. I think I did like one test weekend before going
Was that the first time you started going national?
well. At that level,
actual,
yeah.
like big time.
Yeah,
this is the
yeah,
national
yeah.
tour?
Like biggest national thing I did before that was like going to Jacksonville or Wisconsin or somewhere like that for the 100cc stuff. So I had done national racing prior, but not
Maybe
outside
like
of
the 2-cycle grands or something.
yeah,
like
yeah,
that? Got it.
exactly, and
Alright.
just not outside of 100cc. So
And now at the ICA, you're at the fastest, the top level.
yeah,
at that
you're
time,
top
level,
level in
100cc.
the world aside from maybe KZ or shifter kart racing. So that was cool. And then our second our second race or round was at Moran here, and I had really had the ability to put in the time and test and get some laps in and prepare for that. And we were really fast, but I didn't have any. I think I had bad luck. I think a chain guard bracket broke or something, and I got the meatball while running inside the top 5. And I don't know if we would have won or not, but we would have probably finished in the top 3. And then the final stop was in Canada, and I think my best finish for that season was 5th. But I think between me adapting as a driver and or maybe you're not maybe not. I didn't have the best chassis or whatnot to be on. I just didn't fare as well as I wanted to, and then let's see, '06 is when end of '05, after the star stuff was done, end of '05, I had done a couple of races with Seth on the Tony kart.
And what's Seth doing at that point?
At that point, Seth was ultimately working out of Nash's Karts, which was owned by Terry, and that was actually one of the rivalry 100cc race teams that I had to fight with in '04.
Oh.
So Seth had just started selling Tony karts because prior to that they were on CRG. And I think Ramos's thing was done or whatever the situation, I don't remember. But he had just started bringing in Tony kart stuff as a dealer. And I had called him and asked him if he wanted to do a race together. It was like the last IKF of the year over at Grand J. And so we kind of kicked it around for a day or so, then locked it in. And that's when the first weekend we raced together as a team. And it was just us two, nobody else. We both showed up with his pickup and my pickup, and
Nice.
we ran out of that thing, and we kicked ass both days, and that was really cool. And then we carried on for another year through like '07, end of '07, I think we did that together. And then at that point, or during that time, is when we'd gone from like one driver to 2 or 3, and then 4, and then I'm like, hey, some of these guys you might want to consider maybe charging just a little bit to come pit with us and have you engineer their thing. Oh yeah, that's probably a good idea.
A
And
little more business.
You're telling
side
this
of
to
things.
Terry or to Seth?
Seth.
Okay.
Because at this time it's now Seth Nash Karting.
Gotcha.
Okay,
All right.
this is the beginning of Seth Nash Karting. So we went and raced for another full season together in '06, won a championship, won the first Lake Speed Award that they gave away here, and 2 Grand National Duffys right here at Cal Speed.
Was
And that was
Seth?
big. 2006.
Yeah,
that was a huge one.
It was a cool.
They actually had over there on the other lot.
Oh, okay.
That was when parking, or I should say paddock
Paddock
was over on the other side.
Yeah, was over there on
2006
the
here
west
at Cal
side of the
Speed was
west side of the
huge.
Was
track.
Seth driving too at this point?
Nope.
Or was...
No, he was done. Seth was married, and 2004 was the year that little Blake was born.
All right.
So Seth didn't drive no more. Every once in a while, his ex-wife Sheila drove, and yeah, I kind of had taken over as the driver at that point. And then, like I said, our customer and driver count slowly but surely started to build. Like when we came to this thing here for the '06 Nationals, we had it was probably a 30 by 60 tent at least, and we had over 10 drivers, and
Wow,
it had evolved
that's
into
awesome.
a pretty cool thing. And obviously we had shared some success together, which was fun. I think, like I said, we won 1 or 2 championships that year, and
You felt like you definitely had something to offer.
yeah, and it was cool too because that was we had same thing, known each other since we were probably 12 or 13, but never really worked together before. So that is
And you
what,
guys are about the same age, right?
yeah,
Real
we're
close.
6 months apart or
was gonna
something,
say.
and so we're that's what basically stemmed our relationship, and now I mean the guy's like a blood brother, absolutely one of my
Have
best
you
friends.
Basically, I mean, it's Nash Motorsports now, right? But
Yep.
Is Matt Johnson and Seth Nash Motorsports? Has that been since 2005? Then end of 2005.
Yeah, yes
that
and yes and
relationship?
no. So if you get through '06, we do the stuff we did there. '07, I raced a little bit. Actually, I raced a lot. I still ran the Grand Nationals that year. I finished second to Nick Johnson and Jacob Neal, actually, both that week. So I ran the full '07 season with Seth also. And then '08 is when I decided I wanted to go race a super stock race car at the Bull Ring in Las Vegas.
Sweet.
So I basically stopped go-karting and put all my eggs into that basket. And I went and bought a old 79 Camaro out of someone's backyard. And I could have put a battery in it and drove the thing to my tire shop that I was working at. And the first thing I did was put it on the lift and yank the motor and all the shit out of it, and then pull out the torch and start cutting away. You know what I mean? So
We're going racing.
yeah. So I made the last race of '08, just barely. Kind of drop it on the track and shakedown type thing. And
So '08 was literally that was the transition. I'm not karting. I'm now building my car
yeah,
game.
I thought I'm gonna build a race car because remember, like I said earlier, 30's coming now, right? I'm
Yeah.
28 years old, so I'm like, okay. I was doing well with work and stuff, so it was definitely something I could afford to do, and I started to build that car, and I built it, and I ran for the championship in '09. I won 2 races, and I finished second in the championship that year at the Bull Ring.
Was your dad helping you with this, or is it just kind of mostly just you?
It was all me, but I see, again, by now, though, I understood what it took to win.
Right.
So I kind of took what I had gotten from karting and applied it to the roundy round thing. And that in racing right now, especially, I mean, and forever moving forward, obviously, sometimes once you get to a certain level of driving, you're only as good as the people around you. You know what I mean? So I surrounded myself with another good friend of mine who was a full-blown chassis fabricator, a guy like Mark Zartarian, if you will, for circle track racing, especially at the Vegas Bull Ring. This guy's like the man. So I was fortunate enough to have developed a friendship with him a couple of years prior to all this, 4 or 5 years probably, and so we were already close, and I rented a little space in his shop, and I was under his wing. So nice. I mean, and of course I also knew the importance of the equipment.
Yeah.
You know, in racing, especially now, everybody's pretty damn good once you get to a certain level, and that's when it comes down to your equipment, obviously your strategy in terms of setup and driving for the race, and then how much time you put in the week prior getting prepared for the thing. So I did everything I knew how to do to be the best I could, and it went pretty well for us, for sure.
Sweet.
Yeah.
How long did you run that car at the Bull Ring?
So I ran it for all of 2009, and then I sold it for more than anybody's ever sold one for in Las Vegas at the end of the year. And then I thought that I was going to go modified racing, and I went to a Lucas Oil modified tour race at Havasu. I finished just outside the top 10. It was fun.
How did you do that? Did you get one yourself? Did you
No,
build one?
Same thing. Okay, so my friend, his name's Chris Bray, Phil's Fabrication out of Las Vegas. He still has a modified team to this day that runs on the Lucas Oil Tour. He had a car already that was pre-built. You know, he had built it, and
so it gave you a chance to kind of test the waters a little bit.
You know, I worked out a deal with him where I was able to drive it and just pay the running expenses. And it was cool. It was a lot of fun. But the downside was for me is the preparation side of things was a little bit substandard for my program because, let's be honest, the guy had other guys running for him that were paying to keep the lights on, so the priority was there. And I didn't have the technical knowledge then, obviously, that I do now, nor the mechanical ability for that type of racing. So I was kind of in a situation where it was like, okay, I either need to spend the money to get the right, you know, really good help, someone you're going to be able to pay enough to dedicate themselves to, you know, leaving no stone unturned to be as successful as you possibly can be. So I didn't have that. And I think I took another little break from racing, actually, for about a year.
Do you think that kind of just left a bad taste in your mouth, or you just were at a point you kind of wanted a break?
I was burnt. I was burned out. I had spent a lot of money to do the modified thing, and because of the lack of preparation, I knew where I was lacking. Of course, there's always, I mean, right now, if I go turn laps in a go-kart that I've done millions of laps in here, I'm still always going to be finding something to improve on as a driver. So I'm not sitting here trying to say that I was all ready to go and all that I was lacking was the equipment or the program, but I just could see that it was going to take too much to get to where I wanted to be and be on the program I wanted to be on. So I think after a bad weekend, I was a little bit sore, you know, mentally and whatnot. And I kind of was just like, you know, it's not worth it. And actually, backing up, there was another problem too. I had just actually quit working for that tire company that I was working for. And so I was in the midst of getting ready to go work for someone else, with the stipulation of needing the time off to go race, needing to make enough money to be able to afford to go race, and all these other things. And I'm like, this ain't. It's too the hustle.
You're gonna be forcing
it's the hustle.
too much.
I was burned out on the hustle again.
You remember an old Matty J going, man, I did this before. I don't know that I want to do that shit again.
I was burned out on the hustle again. So I stopped after that first race in 2010, and we got to the summertime, and along came the chance to run another go-kart race. What was it? Oh, there was an IKF race at Buffalo Bills, PRD. And Seth was now working for Buddy, because now Buddy,
all right, BRK.
now Buddy's the Tony Kart West is now in town, and they are the U.S. importer for Tony Kart, and they're based out of Fontana.
Wow.
This is starting to get in the realm where I'm starting to understand what's going on, because
Right,
we're getting into
right.
2011. And
So I show up, same thing, no driving, no nothing. Show up for the race at the temp circuit, run towards the front. I didn't win that weekend. I don't know. I raced towards the front, of course, both days, but I didn't win. And I got a pretty good bill at the end of the weekend for everything. And I went, what? I said, I didn't anticipate this, and long story short, we had a disagreement on the invoice, and I had basically said, okay, I'm not gonna keep, I'm not going to the next one then if this is the deal. And again, I don't want to do it that bad.
Did Buddy hit you up for the weekend or Seth?
No, Seth and Mark Miller were actually running that thing. Buddy was, I don't think by now Buddy had even moved to California yet. I don't know that. Yeah, he was still in Arizona at the time.
Yeah, I remember Miller and Seth being basically the faces. Buddy would show up.
Yeah, because
there was like a corporate or something that would run over here.
Yeah,
then I'd see Buddy,
that makes
but
sense.
most of the time he wasn't around.
Yeah, so Buddy hadn't moved to California yet. So that was it. And then, of course, again, I go back a long time with Buddy.
Right.
So now it's personal, where I'm
Yeah.
like, hey, dude, what's your deal? I can't, big Indy 500 winner. Come on, give me some of that love, And I've always had a really good friendship and long-standing business relationship with Art from RLV.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'll say since the 100cc stuff, I think.
Oh,
you're saying,
going back to the 90s, yeah.
man.
Yeah, I've been very close with Art since like 96 or 7. So he had known what I was up to, because I had still had him as a supporter, and guys like Mike Courtney and stuff. So I had spoke to them as I'm giving him the race report the next Monday or whatever, and I told him going forward how I probably wasn't going to keep going because it's not the deal I want to be on. Well, he had got me hooked up with Grand Products, Mike Tetralt, and Glenn Rocky. Like, they all, as a collaboration, put me on a top kart.
Awesome.
And so I was able to go race again. So I'd missed another race or two, but then I'd showed back up for like the race before and the race of the IKF Grand Nationals at Willow that year.
Was it kind of awkward when you showed up?
Well, of
with
course,
BRK?
you got to remember too, like, by now Seth and I are like best friends. The guy was in my wedding, like the whole bit, and then, of course, Buddy and I, just thought things would be a little different, but they weren't. And so when I saw Buddy there, it was not awkward at all. I broke the ice on that immediately, and we made sure to hug it out and everything else. But I'll tell you this for sure. I did everything I could to make sure that I didn't get beat by any of his drivers that weekend. I think I raced my ass off for 5th place like it was for first, just to hold off.
The carrot, man.
Yeah, just to
It's
hold
the
off,
carrot.
because I'm like,
Was it against Giebler that time?
No.
again?
Giebler was I don't know what Giebler was doing. I don't think he was even there, but it was against actually Justin Copeland, who was driving for them at the time.
Was the Tony Kart the shit right there?
Mm-hmm.
Or it was, yeah.
Yeah.
You've been on the Tony now for a while.
Well,
In fact,
I've been
how
back
long
and
you
forth.
been-
I've been back and forth with OTK since 05.
I was just gonna say, and so kind of grabbing a gear here, getting all the way to more recent times, last 5 years. Obviously, you're rolling in here. You got the Nash Motorsports shirt on, and whatnot, and you've been with Seth. Like consecutively, how long has this particular relationship or this working relationship been going on with you at Nash Motorsports right now?
Right now, okay. So if you, it's an easy and a complicated question to answer, because straight, I've been back with him now since 2016, I guess, right? But prior to that was the Tony Kart West program, right? And the difference was, back then I was still like racing with or for Seth, but now Buddy was involved, and Seth was an employee. Mm-hmm. So that's where there was a bit of confusion on the expectation as far as who was doing what The
dynamic's a little weird.
Right. And again, I was as close with Buddy as anybody, but it was different. So there was a time where I raced for Buddy all the way from, because I got back with Buddy for the beginning of 2011. He finally caved and gave me a job, right? So I got to race for him. It took us a couple races. We went through some lumps. I destroyed a go-kart or two in the process. But by the first SKUSA race of the first Pro Tour, we finally clicked one off and we got a win, right?
Nice.
And that was bitching. But
and this is all still senior at the time, right?
This is Tag Senior at Tucson in 2011.
And this is the Leopard that you guys are on?
We were on a Rock TT.
Okay.
So I ran with Buddy all the way through the middle of 2013, and then I had got to a point where I felt it was best. I had just bought that transmission shop that I had for a little while in Ontario, and I thought it was going to be best because I couldn't commit my time to Buddy to reciprocate what he did for me. So I had chosen to run as a privateer. And so I ran as a privateer from 2013 to ultimately like 2015.
And that's the
That
Smoking
was
Fast
Smoking
Motorsports,
Fast,
right?
yeah.
Correct, yeah. I started Smoking Fast in 2012, and I did IKF races with my team, as well as like local races in Las Vegas when I was still out there at the time. And obviously all the big, heavier events, I was, paired up with BRK
Right.
and Buddy. So once I decided to go completely on my own, that's when we did it, and that was cool too.
But you've been with the Nash Motorsports /
I've
Seth
been
Nash
back,
game
yeah.
since he actually went that route.
Yeah, when he kind of I think he started to get back towards his own in 2013, actually. That's when, because he got let go from Buddy at the end of 2012, and 2013 he was kind of forced to start his own thing. And it was obviously in the infant stages for that whole year, but by 14 it was starting to roll a little bit, and then it evolved more and more and more. Like in 14, I think is when it got big enough to where like he called me. He's like, "Dude, I'm gonna need some help. What am I gonna?" I said, "Dude, no problem. I got you a guy." We gave him, we didn't give him, but I had brokered the thing for Zim to go work over there, and obviously you guys have witnessed what it's become
For sure.
over the years. Yeah. So I've, as soon as I was done racing as a privateer, I was back with Nash, and that's for sure where I'll finish up.
A quick question on that. So you've got the Smoking Fast thing that you're doing, kind of like you said, like on the local regional deal, but the big races are doing other stuff, whatnot. The Nash thing starts rolling right when he starts making his thing happen. So you're kind of you stop doing Smoking Fast, you start doing things with Nash. What makes you get back in a car again? Because I happen to know that you are quite the wheelman, as you had mentioned before, in the old 79 Camaro that you had, right?
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't a 79 Camaro that you're running in Irwindale, and you turn out to be halfway freaking decent in a late model.
Yeah.
How'd that whole thing, how'd you get back into the car game after being out for a bit?
Okay. So in 2016, I had a pretty gnarly flip, and we were, Nash was with CRG at the moment.
Was that the video, I think, at Phoenix?
Oh, that's the famous video clip,
Yeah.
So I had crashed pretty good there, and from that point moving on, I was out of the championship. We had done, I had raced the following day actually, from the day that I flipped. I sat out the main event, but I ran the following day, and I was inside the top 10, and everything was all fine there. But we were really struggling with the material, and naturally, I wasn't having any fun getting my ass kicked. So I sat out a couple more races and pretty much chosen to take the rest of 2016 off for the lack of fun, know? And I was also busy too with other stuff, and I didn't have the fire in me to go do it. Obviously if I didn't feel, when I got up in the morning to get in the car and go to the track, that I had a chance to win.
Yeah.
By now I'm 36 years old or whatever, so I'm hanging out at the Speedway with my dad. And
is he still racing?
Yep, he's still racing. Yep, he's still racing, and his crew chief is now in his mid-60s. My dad's now, well, let's see. Gosh, I don't know. What year are we? He's like 59 or...
At that point.
Yeah.
Right.
And you could tell just the old crews, they're getting burned out, and they just, same thing. They aren't working as hard as they used to, and obviously it's showing in the results. And same thing, I guess the apple don't fall far from the tree. My dad wasn't having any fun. So he was basically ready to quit after he
Hell of a lot more fun going for W's than
yeah.
just being
I mean, the
also
guy's arguably one of the best qualifiers anybody's ever seen at Irwindale in that division. So
The timing of that's funny though.
yeah, and when he got to a point where he was struggling to qualify like inside the top 5 or whatever, he's like, dude, I'm ready to give up. I don't want to do it no more. And he actually had went home because we only lived 10 minutes from there. And I'm like, I get on the phone. I'm like, yo, dude, are you coming back or what? The autograph session's about to start. The race is going to kick off in like an hour. Yeah, I'm coming back right now. Okay. So when he gets back, he goes, maybe we'll go do that end of the year. They had like a open comp out of town, race for the late models at the bull ring. And he says, maybe if I'll have you go race this thing at the bull ring, and if you do worth a damn, we'll let you run it next year out here. And I'm like, he goes, maybe
He's getting ready to pick you up again and yell at you.
Yeah, he's like, he goes, I just probably don't have it no more, And I'm like, I don't think that's what it is, Dad. I go, something's wrong. And by now, because of my little bit of time I spent with Chris Bray and my stock car experience, I got a pretty good idea which way is up as far as keeping the car going left around the track, in terms of setup and stuff. So I'm pitching in and helping a little bit when I can. And there had actually been a night or two where the crew chief wasn't feeling well, and I kind of sort of took over and helped put that thing in victory lane once or twice.
That's awesome.
So I was doing everything I knew how to do, which wasn't much of the time, but some. And I knew he had given me everything he had, and we just didn't have the program anymore.
Right.
Something was wrong. Nobody knew what it was, and that was that. So I went to the bull ring. I qualified 4th, and they inverted us and put us on the front row. It was a 100-lap race. I hit the wall probably more times than I could shake a stick at, but I still finished the race on the lead lap and finished like 6th or something, 7th maybe. But it was good, and so that was
Not
it.
a bad first race back, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, same thing, right? No practice, no nothing. So we had made the decision that we were going to go ahead and take a run at Irwindale. We'll start practicing as soon as the place opens up the following year. So that's kind of how that got going. And I went there, and it's funny, right? Because I had spent, since the place opened, going to that track and watch. I've spotted for guys. Again, I've helped crew some stuff and been part of a winning program. So I could stand in that spotting tower or stand in those bleachers, and I could tell you exactly what to do, what not to do, when to do it, how to do it, right? Mm-hmm. As soon as I got in that race car, I thought I was on another planet. And then, it was so overwhelming. The corners were so long. And then, okay, I rode around on the top, like you mentioned before, when we were talking about racing at Irwindale on the sim. Like, the easy path of least resistance is to cruise around the top side.
Yeah.
And sometimes it could be argued that it's quicker. But I knew, again, that my dad was a bottom feeder. He qualified on the bottom and put it on the pole so many times and won a lot of races on the bottom, as did other drivers. So I knew you had to be able to do both.
Right.
As soon as I went down to the bottom, I'm like, whoa, this is a whole nother racetrack.
Yeah.
So by the time I got done driving that night, I mean, I was so out of sorts, overwhelmed, and everything else that I just wasn't sure if I was going to be the man for the job. I really wasn't. And I went and got on a simulator that following week, 2 separate times for a total of probably 6 hours, and just spent the whole damn time at Irwindale. And then I showed up the next week, and I was like, it was like I knew exactly what I was doing to an extent,
Well,
so
by the end of the year, things went pretty well for you. You're going for they have a Rookie of the Year championship, basically, right, for the new drivers there, and
Yep.
that ended up pretty well. But not just you did score the Rookie of the Year in the late model division. Did you get any W's? What was the shining achievement aside from, or was the Rookie of the Year championship the shining achievement?
That was cool for sure. It was important to me. No question.
Did you feel rookie status being there in that car, or did you?
For sure, at the beginning of the season, no doubt. And this story is kind of funny, and I'll try to just keep it as short as I can. So, I told you the story about the first night at the track. Second night, okay, fine. Well, then the first race comes around a month later, and I qualified 10th, and I finished 10th or 8th or 9th or something, right? Following week, same thing. And I'm running around the top most of the time, and I don't know no different, right?
Yeah.
But we come to find out that the car is nowhere near right. Prior to this, my wife actually sits me down on the couch on a Sunday, turns off the TV and goes, "Hey, are you scared of that thing or what? She goes, because I love coming to the racetrack on Saturday night. It's way better than going to a go-kart race or anything else. She's like, but dude, I can't sit here and watch you run around the top side of the track, not gain or lose a spot. You're not putting it on nobody. She's like, it's not.
You're just driving around.
Yeah. She's like, you're just driving around. She goes, I don't see you being aggressive. It's not the same.
It's not Matt Johnson.
So was this
That's exactly what she said. And I said, well, you got to understand. I go, first of all, that plate,
here.
this is a momentum track. And I said, something's not right with that car, and I got to get it right. I go, I don't know what it is, but something's not right. I said, I can't get back to the gas when I need to. Well, we find out after we start getting a little more and better help, because we basically started with the same existing program that my dad was on. The rear end was over an inch to the left, which is like completely backwards of what you want, right? I mean, if the thing's over to the left, it's going to make the car push like a dump truck. So we get that square, and now we're a little better. Then I start spending a lot more time at the guy's shop who actually designs and builds the car down at Irwindale. His name's Jeff Schrader from the Race Car Factory. So I spend some time down there as well, for two reasons. Number one, I'm hitting the fence almost every week, so I'm getting my front end parts checked on the jig. And for two, we'd have to, occasionally buy some stuff. And then, of course, while I waited around, I sat there and talked with the guy.
Pick his brain a little bit.
Yeah. And I always got along really well. I obviously have a lot of respect for him. And fortunately, he, for whatever reason, had it for me. So he gave me his time. And every single week, I just kept learning more and more and more and more. And he'd give me little crumbs here and there. Oh, you should probably, because you got to think, he'll tell you still to this day that he's not out and he doesn't have favorites out there, but he also works for the big race team that now has part ownership of that, or at least management of that racetrack, the Huddleston Group, and he's paid by them to help make those things go around the track.
Can't really feed off.
Yeah, he probably doesn't want to feed me too much. And but he gave me little crumbs here and there. And you should, if you're having this problem, you should probably check this. Or
he's running 10th. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly, right? So finally, we start cracking the top 5 or so by midway through the season. I start learning more and more about the rules because they're constantly changing. If anybody knows anything about short track racing on Saturday nights,
so one tire, it's only on the right front,
right? Or so I start learning the game. You know what I mean? And I comb my way through the rules. I changed a few things on the car. The biggest thing there was we hired a really, really, really good crew chief, which really was the biggest thing. But I also, again, because I knew the recipe, put the time in. I mean, I spent 40 hours a week every single week on that car, whether it was damage repair or maintenance. Mm-hmm. So what was it? Probably by September, we finally won a race, which was really cool. And I actually won that race on the top side that night.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, ran the top the whole time. Zim was a secondary spotter, and after the first or second caution, we had the lead and commanded the whole race, but he had chimed in during a caution. He's like, look, whatever you do not go away from the bottom. He's like, choose the top for the restart. He's like, and just rail the top. He's like, they're going to get next to you, because a couple times, they do. If you've raced at Irwindale, you'll get a guy down on the inside, but if you can pinch him down and get a drive off the corner, he won't beat you down to the other end. So fortunately, we had a good setup that night, and the guys we were racing against maybe didn't have one quite as good, and we were able to win, and we won on the top. So
nice.
That was cool. And I think the big race that I had won the Rookie of the Year was like 2 or 3 races later, and it came down to literally the last lap of the last race of the year.
Oh, and awesome.
And it was who was fighting for Rookie of the Year, were at least that were in really good contention for it, were myself, Jagger Jones, and Ryan Charteau. So it could have gone either way between the three of us.
At least there was people who were like right at your age, same age.
Oh yeah, yeah, I know, right? And
you
the
were running Masters then, you didn't know.
Oh, I know it, and that was before I was in Masters.
Right, I know.
So
you'd be running with those cats, senior in the go kart, and they kick over.
So those guys were both really fast. They were on very good programs as well. Matter of fact, Jones was on the Huddleston team, and Charteau was on a satellite team of theirs, operated by Kevin Bowles. So I was, like I said, the deal came down to the last lap. I think I was riding around in probably 6th, 7th, 8th, somewhere around there, and Jones was in front of me. I don't know where Charteau was. I don't remember. But all I know is I drove it down in so hard into 3 and just literally drove it around the apron and then drove up the track. And somehow I passed like 2 or 3 cars at once, coming to look checkered, and finished wherever I finished. And
Last race of the year, he finally figures out how to run the bottom.
Hey,
do that every lap now.
Hey, and I had won the Rookie of the Year, but we tied. The only reason I won the thing was because I was the only guy that won a race that year.
Oh,
cool.
boy.
So that was cool. That was a big deal because it was part of the goal. You know what I mean? The goal was obviously to win as many races as we could, at least one, and then to win the Rookie of the Year championship, which was, a cool thing to achieve.
And you follow that up in 2018 with?
Well, actually, the last thing I finished up with there was they had a big money race at the end of the year, and I broke the track record in qualifying, and I still got it.
Oh,
That's
get out.
cool.
Yeah, so...
So you put the old cherry on top.
Yeah. I was I did my diligence, and I was really ultra prepared for that race. I really wanted to win that one bad, and obviously that was we were at a peak point of our season at that point. So I felt like
That's pretty damn cool.
Yeah, and we ran around and tied inside the top 5 of that thing. It was a 100-lap race, so I just kind of cruised for the first 60, 75 laps, and then ended up getting crashed on a restart. So, but then, that's the same year, like I said, that I raced the 206 thing here.
Right. It's really the 206. That's the reason why he won the Irwindale.
Dude, I say it all. I said it earlier. I'll say it again. I think that 206 and the big long corner late model racing stuff really made me better as a driver, even as a go-karter, because you really have. When you spend a lot of time in the corner like that, and granted, the corners in karting aren't exactly long, but you compare the pace of an X30 to the pace of a 206, you really have a better understanding of what's really going on, again, with the applications and input.
For sure.
So it was cool. It was good. And Frank came up with this idea that we were going to go run the Super Nats, and it was the same thing. I'm like, I don't know, Frank. I said, I don't know that that's the greatest idea. That these guys are good, and we haven't run a real go-kart race in a long time.
Yeah.
So I don't want to go run against them bulldogs, Oh, no, we're going to put you in Masters. And I always said I'd never do it. But
I was just going to ask you, I had always felt like you were very reluctant to get into the Masters. I mean, to be fair, very, very good driver. Absolutely can go wheel to wheel with the seniors and whatnot. Although I did hear that you did that this year, and it was a little bit tougher than you anticipated.
Was it
but still, you can do it. You can actually roll up there with the sharp end of some of the best in the business in senior, and that makes you just so damn good in Masters. What was the reluctance? Was it just that I don't want to say I'm old? Because I'll tell you right now, on the flip side,
we know a few people like that.
Yeah. As soon as I turned 35, you talked about Art Verlinger of RLV. I got the opportunity from Art and Rod to go run 206 racing, and that was how I got back into racing.
Right.
Was when I became a Masters driver again. So that was kind of my opportunity. Flip side, you're a stout driver in senior, and you didn't want to go Masters. As soon as you do, we're going for Super Nats wins right away.
Yeah, I mean, I almost won the Super Nats way back when I used to be good in 06 when I ran with the factory there in at Sam Boyd, but I remember I was at a party or something over at Sean Burrs from Go Racing, and David Cole and Howden were there, and at that time I was already 31 or 2 or maybe even 33 years old, doesn't matter, but I was still winning in senior, and somehow Masters got brought up, and I had, whatever the conversation was verbatim, I don't remember, but I know that I said that I would quit before I would go race Masters. Which I guess I sort of kind of in a way technically did, but not really, because I never have really quit. Like I said, I don't even think I've taken a full season out of a go-kart yet. I've always done at least 1 or 2 races inside of a year. So when Frank had the idea, I was like, well, hell, I'm 37, I'm about to be 38. Haven't really, raced competitively at the upper national level in a couple of years.
And you knew there was not a lot of competition in Masters.
Well, no,
I'm joking,
I know
obviously.
that, I saw Giebler go and do it already. I saw, a few, Giamara went and raced that deal, and, while they had success and they won, it wasn't always that easy. I saw Raleigh was out there a couple times, and I'm like, well...
Yeah, those are all wheelmen right there.
Yeah, I'm like, well, I guess we'll go. Why not? You know, Super Nats is a big race. Like, I don't expect to just show up and kick everybody's ass. I
Right.
knew Foster was going to be there. And
There's
guys,
no
not the-
Australians showing up.
It's not the
who are
race
really-
at Adams.
right.
You just show
So
up to.
so I said, well, okay, Frank. I said, if you're, you know, somebody else is taking care of everything, then let's
show
go. I'll go. Why not? So I went, and it was a good time. Obviously, I didn't win, so it wasn't easy. And but I ran towards the front. Fourth, yeah. And I ran towards the front. It was fun. It was cool. And I think what I had decided after that weekend was, and that was the same thing. We were gonna go run with Seth at that race. That's the only time I didn't run with him since I had gotten back with him in whatever years we talked about.
Right.
Was we couldn't put together the right deal, you know, and it was kind of short notice. So I had chose to go run with Perry, which I don't regret. You know, it was a good time, and Perry's a good friend of mine too. So we went and ran with Perry, and we did well. We had fun. I think, you know, looking back, had I had a slightly different setup in the final, things could have gone different, because I did get as high as like second at one point in time, and the race was also shortened. So
Yeah.
who knows what would have been? But
That's right, there was a
but if
red
I'm
in
being
it.
honest, my thing was starting to back up and get really hard to drive. So I wasn't too bummed that the yellow came out or the red.
Jumping ahead to basically current time, like I said in the very, very beginning of the show, you are the reigning X30 Masters champion. While you've had other national championships and accolades in cars and karts, etc., having that national championship and now as, quote, a Masters, how does that rank in the just long list of things you've been able to accomplish in your career?
To be the national #1 driver for SKUSA in X30 Master is definitely an honor, without question, because while I'll say on one hand, is it my greatest achievement? Maybe on paper, sure, but it wasn't as big of a fight as I thought it might have been, and that's not to take anything away from anybody that I raced against, but I would say I was obviously the guy to beat, you know, all season long. And while I did have a really good battle with Renato David both days at Indy, the rest of the season, aside from this first race here where I had a couple of issues with the rain and pushing the bumper in here at the first round at Cal Speed,
Right.
I was the guy to beat. I mean, I was a half a second quicker than everybody in the dry on Friday, and I don't know. I mean, it was big because of what it gives you. You know, you get that national #1 plate. You show up to the Super Nats with the #1 plate. I think that's all great, and it's a big deal for sure. And I'm proud of it. Make no mistake. But it just would have been probably a little more self-rewarding had it been against 30 guys all year long versus 9 or 10.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't as intense as what you can anticipate or experience when you show up to Vegas. It's just not the same. But there were goals that were in place, and I worked as hard as I ever have to achieve them, because I knew I wanted to get that ticket to France, and I knew that I had to face Kip at the end of the year. So I really did put forth a very solid effort. I spared no expense, and I left no stone unturned on the effort or technical side of things for last year.
Nice.
So you've got that under your belt.
I mean, ultimately, I that's the thing. I worked harder by no means. I outworked everybody that I raced against last year in terms of the Pro Tour stuff.
For sure.
And from the time in the seat, I mean, I was in a shifter cart, you know, staying fit and driving as much as I could to be as prepared as possible. Even, like I said, being conscious about, you know, what I eat and what I put in my body and all those things I did, because really the big thing for last year was France and Vegas. I mean, that was really what I had my sights set on. But I knew to get there, I was going to have a strict regiment and a disciplined program, regardless of who I was racing against or how well I was doing. You know, I remember the one day I won by 8 seconds in Utah. I had my head down every single lap and pushed as hard as I could every single, you know, minute. So
talking to Billy Musgrave earlier, or last year, leading up to last year's Super Nats, I go, I'm like, you've already won it, I don't know, twice it was at this point, 3 times before that. And I'm like, how do you prepare for that next Super Nats? He's like, every practice day and every race day counts. It's taking notes, it's being smart and making sure that everything you learn you apply to that race later on that year.
Yep.
And it's tough, man. The Masters class, especially the X30 stuff, is just such an ebb and flow of entries, and especially with the Super Masters and Masters split, it's...
Yeah, I guess everybody deserves a trophy nowadays. I don't see any reason to split that up. I mean, if you take a guy like Brett Harrelson, who's going to be 57 years old next month, and again, the guy is capable of running a really good lap time, and he's in really good physical condition now. Is he an exception to most at his age? Probably. But, I mean, I just don't know. I think for Pro Kart, it's good. For Pro Tour, I think that if you're going to... I just don't see spending the time and the money to go run against a handful of guys.
People, yeah.
Which is why you would actually run senior before also for
Sure.
the competition.
And then to race against a handful of guys instead of, say, 15, because we'd all be grouped together as one, and to have a realistic goal of saying, okay, I'm a 7th place guy this weekend. Let me just shoot for the top 5, Now, granted, we all want to win. We all want awards and trophies and stuff like that. I don't know. I don't...
Well, to add on to it, I mean, you didn't have the most trying of your Pro Tour year, but you were still able to get the number 1, and better yet, you're still able to back that up with an awesome performance Super Nats. You didn't get the position you wanted, but it's not like, easy year, and then you end up 20th.
Yeah, you definitely showed that it was... it was
Yeah,
given
I mean...
it to the right guy.
Yeah,
Exactly.
like I said, I mean, I put forth... I'd worked as hard or harder than I ever had any year prior, and my big thing was Vegas, because the year before in 18, I had definitely as good or better of a shot to win as I did in 19, and I just completely screwed it up. So I was counting every single one of those 365 days before the next one.
Yeah.
And
you could see that under the tent.
Yeah.
Having
for sure.
shared the tent with you,
the
focus was next level.
I was on fire for sure. I was in a good, all last year I was in a good place mentally, physically. I had, really good equipment. I put the time in. I had a little bit more time to spend and put towards my program last year, and I raced more last year than I did in the last 5.
Yeah.
So.
Kind of going off of that 40, right?
Yeah.
Masters champion right now. What's next? What's the goal? What are you shooting for?
All I really care about is Vegas, to tell you the truth. But I think it's whether it be a product of my own or myself, I should say, or if it's just human nature. It's like, if I get this, I'll be fine. It's like, if I could just get that job that pays me X, I'll be in good shape. And then you want more,
Yeah.
And so right now, my heart is definitely set on winning the Super Nats in Vegas. God willing, we have one. Also, I would like to be, a world champion in X30 Masters at the IME International Final. I got a taste of that last year by virtue of winning the Pro Tour Championship. So again, that was a big deal to me. It was definitely, like I said earlier, it was a big deal to win that championship, because I wanted, obviously the pride of being able to do it, but I also wanted that chance to go race against the best in the world in France, and then I wanted that that presence going into Vegas. So it was good, but those 2 things are pretty much what I got left to check off on the list, and we'll see if I'm fortunate to get it done before I decide enough's enough,
Yeah.
I always say if I can win one or the other or both, that'll probably be it. But I've been saying that since I think I've started.
I was gonna say, I mean, I was here on the day you and I think you and Zim, or no, it was you and Seth built your shifter that you just got last year, And I'm like, so what's your plan of this? You're like, yeah, just work out. And I'm like, so I'm guessing after you win X30 Masters at Super Nats, you're going to try to go win Super Masters in this? He's like, probably,
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Who knows? It's cool to always inherit a different challenge. Shifter kart racing would definitely be I can see the fun in that and the challenge. It's unfortunate that the program or the participation or presence in the shifter stuff for SKUSA right now is what it is, but I think that'll all change. These things there's ebb and flows to everything, right?
For
sure. But there's always going to be something to. I can't see myself not racing, but at the same time, it won't be at the intense level that you see me racing at now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just depends on the carrot, I suppose.
Probably. I know. I say that now, but
Like, no, I'm not really into it. Well, I don't know, buddy. There's $5,000 up for the win.
Once you get bit by the bug and like when you're doing something new, whether it be stock car or shifter kart or whatever, and you start running towards the front and figuring it out, and you're up on the wheel and you got a shot to win, even if you don't win, you're like, man, I could do this.
That right there. Anybody who's going to see Matt Johnson's name up on the board there for iRacing here shortly, watch out.
Oh, man.
Oh yeah,
'Cause
it's the same thing.
That's a carrot and a half,
dude.
I'm telling you what.
Well, I mean, and again, we can go a long time, all day and night and whatnot, and keep talking about iRacing and whatnot. But Matty, I gotta tell you, some of your caliber. Racing and driving and coming out here and gracing us with your knowledge and kind of telling us what's going on, and like we kind of talked about before even the story the show got started. Yeah, I know you, but didn't know you, and
Sure.
This has been a hell of a lot of fun. And
hearing the history of what you've been able to do, man, and how long you've been in the sport's awesome.
Seems like it's been a long time. I hope I didn't make it boring.
No,
man. In fact, there's going to be a hell of a lot more Matt Johnson episodes, I hope.
Yeah.
But
anytime.
I really want to say thanks again for coming out here and hanging out with us, man.
For sure.
All right.
Bob, thanks for having me on.